call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, and the time is 5:31. Item 2, board business. A, ad hoc committee report on and discussion and possible action regarding adoption of board policy BDF local, second and final reading. We have the copy of the BDF local that the attorney has reviewed, as well as having our changes that we had discussed at the previous meeting. Again, thank you to the ad hoc committee for all of your work in doing this policy and the bylaws. So does anybody have any questions or comments about the policy?
I just had one. I'm not real sure if this is, it's kind of duplicative under the membership. Oh, hang on just a second. Where is that? Oh, Board of Trustees, sorry. On it's page 2 of 3. It says, Board of Trustees, one board member may serve on the SHAC as an ex officio. Trustee may serve, blah, 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 blah. And then at the very end, when it's talking about membership categories, it repeats again about the trustee on the SHAC shall be limited to 1-year term. I didn't know if that needed to be repeated there.
Where?
Okay,
Yeah.
under
I see under Board of Trustees.
Board of Trustees, and it
then you
says,
went where?
and then under, it's page 3 of 3 or 5 in our, under it, at the very top, it says a trustee on the SHAC shall be limited to a 1-year term and may not renew terms unless no other trustee wishes to serve. So it just repeats what was already said under
Oh, because
Board of Trustees.
I don't know that I agree, but it's saying what the terms are. So it's saying that parents and community members shall serve staggered 2-year terms. I think it's basically repeating.
Right, it is. It's repeating what was.
But did it say what the parent and community member terms were under membership categories?
Not really, I don't think I see.
Because under district employee, it talks about serving the 1-year renewable.
I only saw the terms in the bylaws for the community members and the parents. I didn't see it in the BDF local. And so it's twice for trustee and not at all for the parents and community members.
I think it's just kind of clarifying, because under Board of Trustees, it talks about the terms, and on a rotating basis, a trustee may serve more than 1 consecutive term if no other trustees wish to serve. And then, as you mentioned, there's a section under terms specifically that just address terms. And a trustee on the SHAC shall be limited to a 1-year term and may not renew terms unless no other trustee wishes to serve. I mean, it is repetitive, but it's under 2 different topics.
So I guess but maybe to Sandy's point is, it's not, does it need to be underneath the membership categories
Just in the
and
terms.
in terms?
Yeah.
So like how Board of Trustees, it's under membership category and it's under, like maybe what it needs to be is not under the membership category. Maybe it just needs to be under the terms.
That's what I was thinking.
That's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Is everyone good with that?
Yes.
So where it says Board of Trustees, trustees will serve 1-year terms on a rotating, and then we
Maybe
could
just
take out that last sentence.
Right, and well, or just
The last 2
the way it's worded
sentences.
under membership is actually, it says a trustee may serve more, a trustee will serve 1-year terms on a rotating basis, and on over here it says limited to, and it just sounds a little more confining under the
Under
membership
terms,
one,
it
yeah.
says limited to,
Mm-hmm.
shall be limited to a one-year term. Okay. Let's make it consistent.
Yeah,
Trustees
Okay, so we're,
shall be limited
may,
to,
if we take the phrasing that's in the first part under membership, trustees will serve one-year terms on a rotating basis. A trustee may serve more than one consecutive term if no other trustees wish to serve, and move that over
to terms.
to terms.
Okay,
That phrasing under the membership sounds better than the one in the terms
so
one
then
does.
under Board of Trustees, you have one sentence left.
Right,
uh-huh,
One board member may serve on the shack as an ex officio member.
non-voting
Right.
member.
And
And then
then
that, those
paragraph.
next two sentences would go over and replace what's in membership right now.
So move to term.
to terms.
I mean, to terms, I'm sorry, yeah.
Everybody
Looking
good
at
with
this
that?
and looking at that, yeah.
While we're
Yes.
talking, oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something? Did
Oh, I
some-
was just agreeing.
Does
Okay.
that work? Okay.
And I know we brought it up last time, but I just wanted to ask again. Why we're limiting district employees to 1-year term and the others are 2 years? And I know that the district employees is a 1-year renewable term, but to me, I think it would be better to be consistent and have it, if we're gonna have parents and community members be 2 years, can district employees be 2 years?
I think that's a great idea.
I
Yeah.
think that was up to Dr. Micah, because he's the one that is actually going to be, from my understanding, in control of the, the staff. Because he knows who is going to be there, people move, they move positions and things like this.
But we're doing it by position, not specific person's name, right, on the list?
Right.
So the position will always be the same, correct?
Dr. Micah, what's your thoughts on that?
You're awake out there, Miss Jen? So, my assumption would be is that 1-year term is just coinciding with that you guys have to approve it every year, right? And so, while the title technically shouldn't change, we do periodically change titles and things like that. So, I don't have any heartburn over it being a 1-year, to be honest with you.
Okay,
I don't see every year we're going to bring it back and we're going to take whatever the SHAC committee and Miss Aguilar and those folks say and say, here are the 7 people we still think should be on there, or these are different. But I don't see a problem with it being a year.
okay. I just thought for consistency purposes, if parents and community were 2,
Yeah.
why
I
employees
think,
would be 1.
Yeah, because I think you're going to come back once a year and redo it, and that'll give us a chance if we've done some reorganization to change whatever titles are in it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
On that, let me back up. We're on that same page 2 where it says committee and standing committee structure. Can it just say standing committee? I'm not sure what the differentiation is between committee and standing committee structure. Because it's just standing committee, right? So we've got SHAC, and then we have standing committee structure.
It looks to me like the language inside the paragraph was actually written to eliminate, because it says, each chair will be, each standing committee,
Uh-huh.
it keeps saying standing committee, so it is redundant.
So I think it could just
Yeah.
say standing committee over on the left-hand
I
side, right?
agree with that.
Instead of committee and standing.
Right.
committee.
Exactly,
Oh, okay,
'cause
that's
Does that
what
make
you're saying.
sense?
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely.
And I know I sound like I'm being nitpicky on this, but if we're gonna go to the trouble of creating a document, I think it ought to be something that's clean and concise, and
I agree,
So-
absolutely.
so I don't want somebody to take offense that I'm, trying to ask questions or. Okay, let's go back to the first page. Sorry. And just, again, a few little cleanup kind of things. It looks like we went through and we put trustees instead of board members. So if you go to the fourth paragraph where it says each parent/legal guardian and community member selected by a trustee serves at the pleasure of the board member. So should that say serves at the pleasure of the trustee?
Yes.
If we've gone through and.
He says yes.
Okay.
I think trustee is what's used in law, correct, Mr. Lopez?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And on the version that I did a review on, I tried to convert that to where
Okay.
it's always referring to trustee. Where and I may have missed one, but that was what I was trying to convert.
And that's what it looked like to me, and so that's why I thought, well, maybe we need to make sure we change that to trustee as well. Okay, where we talk about they will serve, when there's a new trustee and this is in red. When there is a new trustee elected or appointed by the board in the event of an unexpected vacancy, the new trustee may select the parent, legal guardians, and community members to serve to represent the trustee's single-member district. So that, just to clarify for me, that parent, guardian, or community member would not be able to serve out their term? That would be an immediate,
Yeah, that bothered me too. It just seemed so unfair if someone has
because if you're like a year and a half into
invested the time and the effort to, why are you all of a sudden not a good representative of your community? I would, is there a way that that can be changed to finish the term? Or something, because it just seems,
And the terms are 2 years, so it
Right.
wouldn't be, unless somebody was appointed to the board midway, it wouldn't likely be a year and a half term, it'd be a year.
so,
I think that the, is newly elected. We have to listen to what our constituents want us to do. And it's based, our election is actually based upon what our constituents are asking for. So to say, oh, well, you know, you don't have any control over this, I don't think that's right. I think that the new board member should have the opportunity. Now, that new board member may just elect to say, okay, great. We want, you know, just keep it as it is because they don't know anybody anyway. But I think that that new board member needs to be given that option.
Because that will be, you have like a month basically left. Elections be in May.
mm-hmm.
And then that person will have, the last meeting is in June, is that correct?
According to the new bylaws, yes.
Yeah. So you could effectively have, I guess, 4 new people come on, 6 new people come on for the last meeting and then have to get, so I guess the timing of that though, they'd have to be approved in June.
Well, I don't think we're
Those new
approving
members.
new members until that first meeting in August.
So I don't know that you'd be able, I mean, does this even give the flexibility for you to swap out people right after you're elected? Or would you
Well,
have
it
to
would be
wait,
that
you'd have to wait
August.
until August, which I mean,
So I guess the example, or the thing I was thinking about, the example I was thinking about is, let's say you've got, because they're serving 2-year terms, right? So let's say somebody gets appointed in '23. There's a change of trustee in '24. So technically, that person that came on in '23 would be gone, would serve '23 and '24. So they would serve, so if you had a new trustee come in '24, then they've only served 1 year of their term.
1 year of their term.
And I guess my thinking about it is that person has been on it for a year, they've helped their subcommittee do some work. Is that disruptive to the process to not have them, if that subcommittee is in the middle of something? I don't know,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Or if that trustee could also choose not to do anything and leave everything the same.
They could.
If they, I think, well, it does say to represent the trustees' single-member district, so if everybody's representing their district that's appointed, that trustee, and it does say may select, could just leave everything the same.
The new trustee could, but the new trustee, but I think this is also saying you as a new trustee could,
Yeah, they could.
so you're,
To David's point, though, too, that that's one issue, but then to David's point, if someone comes in May and then appoints in May for 2 months or something,
well, but I don't think we appoint till the
Yeah,
first
you wouldn't-
regularly
you
scheduled
wouldn't be
board
able to do
meeting,
that,
which
though.
would be
They
August.
serving a minimum of
Okay.
1 year.
Yeah, so you'd
Regardless.
get at least
Okay.
a year.
And then the
which-
rotation that's outlined in the attachment has 50-50, so you've got alternating rotations, so.
Could we say,
I think it's minimal impact to keep
Okay.
it at letting the new trustee.
could we say something to the effect that the member would be able to select or present names in August, that first board meeting in August?
Well, I think that's already in there.
Yeah, so that's, I feel like that's sort of baked into the language that we've got in the bylaws.
Yes.
It's not in the policy.
But no, I'd say in lieu of essentially saying, okay, we have people here, we want to change them out right now. Okay, something like that.
Well, and that's what Shannon was
Yeah.
saying, is that we wouldn't do it until August anyway. So if a new trustee is appointed or voted in May, it wouldn't be until August before the appointments, and it's gonna be minimal impact because they're alternating 2-year terms.
So my question is, and I understand that, because what you're saying is completely logical. So how can we keep that from happening, where a new trustee comes in and says, I want to get rid of everybody right now?
So the way that you would, in my opinion, what you would say is they would finish their term. The-
Okay, I like that, because what you're saying is logical, because it's saying, it's like picking them up and just saying, no, you're discarded, and I get that. So how can we write it so that it's very clear in that respect?
Mr. Lopez? Well, I mean, you're
It's
the,
logical,
Yeah, you're right.
very.
I think those are all good points. So it would seem to me if the desire is to essentially allow the new trustee comes on, whoever is on the shack from that trustee's single-member district would be allowed to, is the desire to finish the term? Or is the desire to replace them in August?
well, my,
That's sort of decision point one for you all,
Right.
right? So are you all saying you'd want them to finish the term? So whatever term that shack member has left, they would be allowed to finish it, and then the new trustee would select to replace that
At the
person at
next.
the end of the term? Is that what we want to do?
that was what I was saying.
Okay, all right.
I
Well-
think the other component to that too is we have to remember that any replacement on the shack is another burden for staff too, to get that new person up to speed. So that's another piece to that. So if they can finish their term, then there's the expectation of, okay, we're gonna have new people at such and such a time, and they'll be able to.
So the new
Anticipate.
trustee, so using that example of, so they would have 1 year, so then the new trustee would then be able to appoint somebody for the next 3 year, 2 years, and then potentially renew that for 2 years. So then when another trustee comes in, then that person would finish out their 2 years, and then, so I think a new trustee would always have the ability to fill that vacancy, or fill that spot with time still left in their term, their 4-year term, right?
Right.
Using that example. So,
And if we have these staggered terms right now that are coming on, at a minimum, there might be 2 openings anyway that a new trustee could fill.
True. I mean, it depends on
Immediately.
how the staggered terms go.
Yeah.
So what's the language?
So one way to, I think, address what the board desires to do, or as I'm hearing, is to say, when there is a new trustee elected or appointed by the board in the event of an unexpected vacancy, the new trustee may select the parents/legal guardians and community members to serve to represent the trustee's single-member district, comma, upon expiration of the pending SHAC member's term. Does that make sense?
That's almost what I wrote down before
Yeah.
you read it.
Yeah. I think that covers what you all are looking for.
I had upon the end of the
Yeah.
current term.
That's right. I think something simple like that, making it clear that that new trustee is going to get to replace as those SHAC members' terms expire. So if the election coincides generally with the expiration of certain SHAC members' terms, then there would be the ability for that new trustee to replace those people, to select new people for the SHAC.
So it may be immediate, or at most, it would be a year, I would think.
Something like that. That's why I'm wanting to make that clear. Because I think there's a distinction between saying you want them to finish out their current term, or just saying that the newly elected or appointed trustee would get the opportunity to select at the, in accordance with whatever schedule you are going to set. So if you're going to set it in August, that would be the time when there would be a replacement. So it's either one, replacing them at the end of the SHAC member's term, or adding language that says they would be replaced in August in accordance with, or with whatever timeline. So we tweak the language a little bit. So it really just depends on what y'all want to do.
Okay.
I think what he said about upon the ending of the term.
I
That's
just
at
like
the
to
end of the
keep
term?
it simple
Yeah.
upon the end of the term.
Yeah.
And if we find out down the road that this needs to be adjusted, then we adjust it. I mean, we need to see it in action. And
This also doesn't. With vacancies, people dropping off for whatever reasons, I know we've got the bylaws we're gonna go through, there's some stipulations in there about membership and,
Okay.
so I think we're always looking for volunteers. And so,
that's
Okay.
true.
and not everybody can fulfill those roles all the time.
That's right.
Right.
So,
Okay. So in looking at this BDF local, it looks like the only way a SHAC member would be off of SHAC is if their status changed, like they were no longer a parent or lived
So
in the
what are you
district.
reading? Vacancies?
So, yeah, vacancies. But I guess, do we need to address removal of a SHAC member?
Yes.
How to, so do we need to put something in here that says a SHAC member may be removed if certain things happen? And one of them is they've moved out, or they're no longer a parent, or
That they
whatever.
don't show up.
Is that
Let's say they
and
don't.
so
I
and
thought
that's
that
why I
was in
sort
the-
of referenced the bylaws a
somewhat
second
in the
ago, is I think
bylaws.
that's
I
in
think
the,
that's in the bylaws.
and I don't know if
So
that
that-
detail makes more sense. in
That's what I'm
there.
asking, does it need to be here in policy or just in bylaws?
I think it's just should be in bylaws.
Okay.
It could be in bylaws.
Right. I think what I would encourage y'all to consider is strategy versus tactical, strategic versus tactical, right? Keep your BDF kind of high level. I'm looking out. And then your bylaws are getting more into the how of that stuff's going to play itself out. Does that make sense, Mr. Lopez?
It does, and one way to do that is to simply say, and you can include it there in your policy addressing this, that removal of SHAC members will be in accordance with the bylaws as they currently exist or may hereafter be amended. So what that does is it basically says whatever the bylaws say, because you all are going to review the bylaws every year. And so by having the language as I just described it, if you all change the bylaws in the future you don't have to come back and revisit your policy because the policy just says, see the bylaws. And the bylaws, whatever you all decide on those on an annual basis, if you decide to change it, then you don't have to worry about changing the policy.
So, could we also, would the other way, instead of putting that in BDF, would it be just to upload the bylaws as an exhibit in BDF?
You can, yes, although I would still advise to just include some language that says, just please see the bylaws.
Okay.
Because that way, if you all should come back next year and amend them, you don't have to come back and revisit your policy. You can simply amend your bylaws to make any changes that you desire with respect to removal of SHAC members for cause. Like you said, if somebody just doesn't show up, right, or they're not contributing, or, you know, whatever the reason is, you just put it in your bylaws and you don't have to worry about amending your policy anymore because you're always going to have that specific reference to please see the bylaws.
So would you suggest that that be a little blurb maybe underneath vacancies on that page 3 that says removal and it just says reference the bylaws?
Yes, you would just put in there that removal of SHAC members will be in accordance with the bylaws as they are currently written or may hereafter be amended.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that way, then it just comes back to, again, your bylaws, which you'll revisit however often you're going to revisit it. And even if y'all say you're going to revisit it annually, I mean, as the board, y'all have the authority to revisit it even more frequently than that. So you don't have to wait the entire year, right? If y'all decide like, hey, something ain't working, then you're able to come back, put it on an agenda, and revise it even in advance of the year. So, yeah, you all
Okay,
always
so-
have that authority.
So is everybody good with that? Yes. Okay. And then I just have one last thing. On page 2, where we have meetings, the last sentence, it says, standing committees shall keep descriptive notes of meetings and work sessions and shall submit them to the SHAC facilitator. I think maybe that needs to be in the next section that is standing committee structure, because I think this meeting section is talking about the SHAC, full SHAC. So I would recommend moving that
That's
to
logical.
the next section. Okay. Oh, yeah, just call it standing committee. Okay.
That's just your rules around standing committee.
Okay. So
Oh, so instead of saying standing committee structure.
let's just
say
call it standing committee.
Committee.
That's all the kind of the rules around standing committee.
Yep. Okay. Does anybody else have anything on these?
I had one very, very minor, I think typo, but I need to ask. In Mr. Lopez, in your edits, there's a, under terms, we added a section that says, so long as the parent/legal guardians, says to otherwise meet all
Yeah.
eligibility requirements. I think we just need to remove the word to, unless that to is some legal.
So long as the parent/legal guardians, I thought maybe it
I
should
think it's
just be
supposed to say
meet.
Otherwise.
Continues to.
Oh,
Oh,
continues.
we didn't see
That
continues.
was my,
Okay.
so it would say, so long as the parent legal guardians continues to otherwise meet all
Continue
eligibility
to
requirements.
Otherwise meet, okay, so
Okay.
continue.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on BDF? Look like
No.
you were.
I'm
okay.
sorry, no.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve BDF local second and final reading with all of the changes that we've discussed?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Thank you, Mrs. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Now we're going to item B.
So let me ask,
Oh.
who's gonna make the changes?
Since we have the audio, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll work on those and then send them to you all to make as just maybe Mr. Lopez can review them and then we can push them out and just get your blessing and then we'll send them on to TASB and get them
All right.
uploaded.
Okay,
Fair enough?
Thank you.
thank you. Item B, ad hoc committee report on and discussion and possible action regarding revisions to School Health Advisory Council bylaws. So I think the best way to do this systematically is to just go through it section by section and see who has questions, comments. How do y'all feel about that?
Maybe think you should start first.
Okay,
I think that's good.
you think that's a good
No,
idea?
yeah, just go section by section
Okay.
rather than rehashing
Okay.
everybody with the same questions.
Okay. Well, I just think, the way my brain works on that. The first question that I had, though, that's kind of more of a general question is when I was looking at the, that school health advisory, was it the DISH or whatever recommendation? They said or suggested that bylaws include the formal name of the shack and a purpose statement. And so I was curious, did y'all talk about that? Because, and the bylaws that I had pulled up were Fort Bend, and they actually had it. They had like a section 2, and it said name. The name of this advisory body will be known as Fort Bend ISD, blah, blah, blah. And then it said section 4, purpose. The FBISD School Health Advisory was established by the board to assist the district in meeting, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't know,
Yeah, no, we didn't consider that.
okay, do you think we need to, or y'all okay
So a
with?
good question would be with Fort Bend, or the example that you pulled, do they have a local on theirs, or do they just have BDF legal? Because like in our newly adopted local, we kind of say in compliance with section
Okay.
28004, the School Health Advisory Council shall be advisory body, and I know it doesn't necessarily have a purpose statement necessarily.
But that may be the
In the
purpose.
draft of the bylaws, under responsibilities, item C
Kinda
kind of
has.
has the purpose. And then on page 5, item G says, at the end, it says all issues pertinent to the shack mission. And so I think that it does need to kind of have a definition, within the bylaws of what the mission is, if we're going to call it out at the end and say it has to align with the mission.
So maybe we should,
But C kind of really gives us that high level of what that mission statement-esque is.
Yeah, I think really we looked at what we already had and trying to, work with that with some amendments based on other districts that was similar. So, I mean, we can add it, but didn't want to make it too lengthy.
It's kind of in here already, and so we may need to just like highlight this is the mission of the shack, and then it kind of covers both, right?
like just add it as a section,
Right.
like how it has section 1, 2, 3, just add it as a section that says,
Like pull C out of responsibilities and move it into a section and call it
mission.
mission. Yeah.
So let me ask
Or
why.
Just to cohesively have the defined mission of the organization. And then, like I said, on page 5, item G says maintaining regular communication with the shack chairperson on all issues pertinent to the shack mission, but there's nothing in here that says that that's the mission. So just to have
I
it.
guess I'm kind of straightforward and base it on the mission is what the statute and the policy says and what TEC says.
Yeah, and it's in here, it just doesn't align with, this says this, we have to follow the mission, but then there's no mission.
Under C, maybe we could, under those responsibilities, put in the word mission in that phrasing somewhere. So that and maybe move it up to A.
Or maybe make it the first paragraph under responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
oh, good.
Yeah. just make it a separate paragraph. Keep it the way it's worded. According to state law, the shack shall have the following responsibilities to fulfill its mission of providing advice.
Yep.
So add it to that sentence. Just
Yeah.
take C up
And
there
then
and add
just
it to that first sentence.
Move C up, yeah.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
That works.
So,
That gets the word mission in there that's referred to in G and doesn't take anything out and still keeps everything in coordination with the BDF, yeah.
What G are we talking about?
G under section 8,
what page is that, Sandy?
Article 8
Page-
is page
page 5
5.
or 11, depending on
I'm
which.
on page 5.
Okay.
I see section 8. We talking about this?
It's referring to the mission, but there's no,
In the shack mission.
yeah, there's no phrasing of the mission itself. Just to provide a link back to mission. If someone says, well, what is the mission, then you can just go look at
Yeah.
that new
I think we
sentence. that-
probably should have just used another word instead of
Probably so,
mission.
yeah.
That would have been easier.
But if we just move C up there, put a comma after that to the following responsibilities to does that work? What I'm saying, to move that up? Okay.
I agree.
Okay, also at the top, the very first sentence, it says, statute and policy, each school district in the state is required in chapter 28, subchapter A through K. I think that should be A through Q. Because I think that when I went through 28.004 and looked at all the different letters, it went past K. And so I don't know if, because these bylaws are from at least 2012, have they added letters to 28.004? Do you think can you help me out, Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, I think the bylaws, I guess, based on the research that was done, were passed back in 2011 or 2012. But with respect to 2804, there are going to be constant additions to it. I think it's an issue that's likely to be revisited
So maybe
by the
we shouldn't say
legislature
that.
anyway. What I would recommend is that to the extent you want to incorporate 28.004, I would also add language that just says that the purpose of the shack is going to be to advise the board with respect to any and all matters under section 28.004 as they currently exist or may, again, hereafter be amended.
Okay.
Because I think with the impending session, it is likely that there may be additional changes to the statute in 28004. And rather than having that cause you to have to come back
Okay.
immediately and revisit your bylaws, it'll just already be in there so that when the new version of the statute goes into effect, your bylaws already really are going to be able to cover it.
So
right?
maybe we could just say 28.004, and maybe you could help us with the language.
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest thing, because like I said, I do expect that that bill will be, or that statute may be revisited again in the coming session and in future sessions.
So can we just take out subchapters?
Yes.
Yeah, it just- yeah,
28.004 and
'cause-
strike out subchapters?
Absolutely, because in effect, what's going to happen is if there is additional things that are going to be placed as requirements for the shack to advise the board on, right? Then you just want to have that to where your bylaws are nimble to where the shack would then be able to just go on with whatever work the statute calls for
Okay,
without having to come back and, oh no, now we got to come back and revise the bylaws just to add subchapters,
okay,
right?
okay.
So,
Stay there, because I have another question.
okay.
And then it says the shack is specifically authorized by the Board of Trustees in policy BDF legal, BDF local, and EHAA legal. Is it also EHAA local?
If we have an EHAA local policy. I don't know.
And-
I don't know off the top of my head if we do.
Okay, so can we maybe double check that?
When I was looking, I didn't find one.
I don't think.
Yeah,
You
not
didn't?
every legal
Okay.
policy has a adjoining local policy.
And that's because I was going through, I think, one of the other ones that I was looking at
Okay.
in bylaws. That's,
Yeah, and if y'all
So-
don't have an EHAA local, then, there would be
Okay.
no reason to
When
include
we
that.
looked, when we were working through this, we didn't find an EA.
Yeah.
Okay.
That means that y'all have never created one.
okay.
Yeah.
And then FFAR, reg, FFA, reg. That was another
FFA
one that-
reg would be does it do with student records?
I don't know.
If-
Okay, I'll just,
So where is that? Is that in here? I'm not seeing FFAR.
that's what I'm saying. I was looking at another bylaw one and they referenced those. And so that's why I was
Oh.
Or
wanting
was
to make
F-
sure.
was
FFA.
Was
reg.
FFA regulation may have been where some of these shack issues were placed back maybe 2016 or so.
Okay.
Doc,
Is it the
So,
wellness
so you
policy?
do have an EHAA local.
we do.
You do.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't see it.
I'm looking at it right here. Basic instructional program, required instruction, all levels. It talks about human sexuality instruction. The following process shall apply regarding the adoption of curriculum materials for the district's human sexuality instruction. So you do have an EHAA local.
Local, not legal.
So does that need to be, I guess, listed up here?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, if you have that, it would need to be incorporated. Now, EHAA local, Dr. Michael, which you just read, may have been in one of your recent updates, because that may codify the new process in your policy that is required
that's what
to
so-
undertake human
Right.
sexuality instruction review, and then all those other topics that are covered, like
So I'm
trafficking
gonna
and
look
all
at
of
the
that.
date, Mr. Lopez. Holy, that's legal, pardon me. 11/8 of 2021, so yeah.
Yeah,
That
that
would
would've
have
been it.
incorporated some of the new changes.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, it sort of illustrates, right, like that, they changed 28004, so that led to that policy change. So again, this is why you want, I think, flexibility and nimbleness for
Okay,
that.
so to that point, sorry to interrupt, should we put the policies on there or not? Like, do we have to say those if it could be changing?
Well, what you could do is simply say, and instead of referencing specific policies, you can reference all applicable policies
Okay.
as they currently exist or may hereafter be amended. Because again, as you see changes in the law, and I think this EHAA local was probably a great example, as you see changes in the law, then sometimes those laws will require you to pass certain policies. So that EHAA local was one example of that.
So are y'all okay with that? If we just say authorized by the Board of Trustees in all applicable policies? Yep, okay.
Yes, because I don't think we want to come back and revisit this every time there's a change.
Yeah, right. So, no, I
Yeah.
agree.
So
Okay.
our EHAA local does not have an adopted date. So does that mean we adopted it on this date issued?
If you'll remember, this was something that I got on here a while ago. Just the date that it shows online from TASB is when TASB uploaded it. Our date of adoption would be upstairs in our binder that is the official record for the school district. This is something, remember, Ms. Huey, you and I spoke about this, is that TASB puts that date of the date that they've uploaded it to the webpage, not the date you all approved of it. Does that make sense?
It
That's-
does.
I-
I just didn't see an adopted date.
Correct, because they don't do that. It's upstairs in a file in my office.
Okay,
Yep.
so did we adopt it?
We did.
Okay.
I mean, we can look in and go back to see when we adopted it, Miss Williams, but it won't be 11/8. It'll be some other date.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so does anybody have anything on section 1?
I do on the last paragraph. Oh, I'm sorry, here on section 1. I was looking at article 1, never mind.
Okay,
Continue.
section 1, okay, section 1, section 2, section 3,
That's what I have.
okay.
The language in blue that was added, the last sentence where it says bylaws shall be updated at the bottom with each revision / amendment, and then it says, for example. Was the intent to just do the most recent adoption and the most recent revision, or to have a complete record of every revision or amendment that was made? Because I was thinking if we just change to say bylaws shall be dated at the bottom with the latest revision / amendment, and strike
was
that
the-
last
That
sentence.
was the intent.
Okay, because
Instead
the way
of
I read
each-
it,
Instead of each revision, because that could be kind of long.
okay, yeah, I'll say that could get very, we could have 5 pages of revision. So if we could just change each to, I guess, the latest,
Okay.
and then you can leave the rest of it, it's fine.
Okay, but, so, with each revision amendment, for example, bylaws, page 5, approved by Northeast ISD Board of Trustees, November 22, previously amended November 12. So would you change that to just say approved November 22, period?
That would be my suggestion. That you just have the latest date of whatever has been approved. I guess I don't know what the purpose would be to have the previous date listed.
Okay, so bylaws should be dated at the bottom with the latest revision, is that what you said?
That's what I was suggesting,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have anything in Article 1? All right, Article 2. Does anybody have anything on page 1, Article 2?
I do, other than the item C that we
Uh-huh.
are moving. Items B and H, I think, are saying the same thing. And so what I'm suggesting is that we strike B, and then in H, it says, to provide a written annual report and presentation to the Board of Trustees on or before 30 June each year, comma, or more frequently if requested by the Board of Trustees. Because that's basically what B says.
Can we say June 30?
You can talk to Ms. Williams about that.
Yes, we can say June 30.
Okay, so to provide a written annual report and presentation to the Board of Trustees on or before June 30 of each year, or
More frequently,
more frequently, that language from the top.
yes, if
Okay.
requested by the Board of Trustees.
Okay. Okay,
I have, on I,
yes,
it says to assist the district in ensuring that local community values are reflected in the district's health education instruction, and gather input from other parents and community members, and make decisions based on what's best for the children of any ISD. I don't know that it's the folks that are appointed to this committee. I don't know that it's their responsibility to gather community input or I mean, they're welcome to if they want to, but I think
I agree.
it's our responsibility to make sure that information gets to those committee members.
I agree.
And the only reason I say this is that we have some great people in the district that are willing to sit on these committees, volunteer their time, and if they are so excited about it and want to go out and talk to their neighbors, talk to the community, set up potluck dinners or things in the park to get information, I think that's great and we should encourage that. But those that want to come and provide their support but aren't comfortable doing that, I don't want to make it sound like we are requiring them to do that, because again, that's our job to take that feedback and responsibility. And I don't think we should put that on our volunteers who are doing this sort of out of love for their district and sort of a favor to.
Well, not only that, we've given community options for reaching out to SHAC with by email and things like that, so community can provide input either to SHAC or to the board directly on any issue. So I really agree with you on this, David, that it's putting an unnecessary. I mean, we are asking SHAC to be that voice of the community So I think that they're going to be naturally corresponding or hearing or talking to friends and community anyway.
Can we say something to the effect that it's okay? You see, our thought process was this. When you're sitting there, you're excited about it, and you want to talk to the other parents, you're in car line or whatever, you're going to be getting feedback.
Sure.
But we want them to know that they're allowed to get feedback from other parents. And so maybe not make it sound like a prerequisite for this position. Just say you are allowed to get feedback from the community, however
Maybe
you want to do it.
encouraged?
Encouraged to get feedback, yes, but it's not a requirement.
Could
Yeah,
Well, but
that's
could
under
that just be a
responsibilities.
conversation?
Yeah, does it need to be in
Instead
the
of being in
bylaws?
bylaws?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, because I had written this down too, that first sentence, that's like the law, so I don't think we have to restate, because that's actually in 28.004, so I don't think we need to restate that in the bylaws. Because we don't typically have to restate law.
Which first sentence?
On I,
assist?
to assist the
Okay.
district in ensuring, so I kind of questioned that whole I.
I had made a note to just totally delete it, but I really like the idea of having it as a conversation at the introductory shack meeting, you know, where the facilitator or the chair says, we really encourage you to communicate with your friends and fellow parents and everyone about their feelings on the shack, and share the email address, which I can't remember off the top of my head.
Shack at NEIC.
That's what I thought it was. I just wanted to make sure that I knew it was underlined over there. And make sure that they share that email address so that people can, it'll be on the website, but share it with your friends.
Yeah.
What do y'all think?
I mean, I'd be fine striking that whole bullet point. I was trying to see if there's another spot where we could have some sort of,
Encouragement there.
yeah, either maybe it's
Yeah.
under the facilitator part when we get to that later, where at the first meeting we encourage, I don't know. something
I'm
like
just
that.
wondering though, Mr. Lopez, is it important for us to make it clear that they're allowed to talk about this outside? Because we don't want them to think, oh, no, I'm not allowed to talk about this.
No, that's
Okay, I
that's
see.
never been a
So
part of
that-
it, yeah.
So it's kind of making it clear, it's
I
in writing.
see.
Okay, I
Okay.
can talk about this, yay.
Okay, so that,
awesome.
now that sound, to me, that's a little different than them just being able to get community input. So if the concern is that they think they're under some non-disclosure agreement where they can't talk about it, I think that, to me, that's different than just going out and saying, hey, I've been talking about this on the shack and I'd like your feedback. So, I'm not sure if we,
So would that fall then, it would seem to me that would fall
With the
more
meet-
to the facilitator to say, you know,
Yeah.
and let's
And
keep
with
in
the
mind, these
meetings
meetings are being recorded and everything, so it is, if they should know that you can talk about it because everything is public on these,
and they're open
and they're
to the
open.
public. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, is there, and I have not reviewed the bylaws, but if there's a section in there that discusses meetings, like how the meetings will be conducted, you can
There is.
include a section in there that simply says that topics that are discussed by the shack at a meeting can be discussed by members in the community. I mean, I don't think there's any issue with that. The information is going to be public, and this way, at least, it's codified in there that way none of the shack members have any questions, right?
Yeah.
They know that they can discuss it outside if they need to. And I think it's just a simple sentence like that.
I'd prefer to strike I in the responsibilities and move that to
A section in
something
meetings,
similar to that in the meetings, yeah.
maybe participation.
Well,
Members
meetings is on
are-
the next page,
Yeah.
so we could maybe see where that would fit.
Yeah,
Or maybe under section 6, decision-making.
So we're good with
Article
striking
3
I
meetings.
then, okay?
section.
Yeah, so
Right, okay.
we're
Just
striking
wanna make sure.
I. Okay, anybody have anything else on page 1 under Article 2? Nope. Didn't know if you were waving your hand at me.
No, too much coffee.
I'm like,
week,
is,
you know.
is that, yes,
No.
okay, all right. Top of page 2, Article 3, meetings. I'll start. Regular, Section 1, regular meetings. We struck through full shack in the BDF. So should we strike through full here and just say the first shack meeting will be held no later?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so, to be consistent.
Okay, so we're going to strike through. So anywhere we see.
Is this to differentiate between a regular shack meeting and a standing committee meeting?
Because I think we talk about standing committees and we talk about them as standing committees.
But that was the intent,
Oh,
to
was-
say full. That's why full was there, but it could just say shack.
To make sure that you knew that it was the. Well, I'm trying to be consistent, I think, between this and BDF, and we took it out of BDF, so.
I don't think, and I
That's
could be
fine.
wrong, I don't think it makes it inconsistent to have full shack, because the way BDF addressed full shack was different than the way the bylaws address it. And I think the intent here is different than having full shack in BDF.
Well, I guess I'm interpreting it a little bit differently, just because shack, you have to have 4 regular meetings of, and I'm going to say the word full shack. So it says the shack shall conduct a minimum of 4 regular meetings. The exact number of meetings will be determined by the workload of shack. The first shack meeting will be held no later than September of each school year. So that's the,
Even in that paragraph, it's not consistent, yeah.
and then standing committees, which remind me, I didn't necessarily always mark it, but I think we're calling them standing committees and not subcommittees.
Right.
So,
Except for in section 5, but we'll get there.
yep. So I don't know, if y'all think we need to leave it as full shack, again, I just was trying to be consistent through.
I don't think it has the same meaning in the BDF as it does in the bylaws.
Okay. All right, and then there's that June 30.
It'll be changed. See, I already changed it.
I
right
know,
there.
I know. Okay, anybody have something in section 1?
On section 1, I don't know, just the no later than September of each school year just kind of doesn't ring well with having a no later than 30 June or June 30th each year. September end of month, September 30th.
September 30,
Yeah,
Okay,
done.
thank you.
Okay, anything else in 1? All right, section 2, open meetings. Shack meetings are open to the public with limitations. I don't know of any limitations for the shack meetings being open.
It should just be open.
So I think that we should cross through with limitations. I think it should just say shack meetings are open to the public. And then I think that next sentence, a written request from any member to include name, I think that can all be deleted, because I think that was the limitation to it being open, and since it's open, I think you can just
I
cross
agree.
through that next, a written request from any member to include name can be deleted. Do you all agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, and
So
then,
was there a reason it was there before? Because this came from the current bylaws as
back in
written.
2012? I don't know.
I'm glad you asked that because I actually wrote a note. I think, but this is probably more of a Mr. Lopez question. I thought that with limitations was because I was of the understanding that the shack meetings, although they're open to the public, are not, they don't have to follow Open Meetings Act. And I think that language was in there to give that caveat that it does not have to follow that.
So should we be specific then? And instead of saying with limitation, should we say shack meetings are open to the public, however, they're not, are not subject to.
I don't necessarily see a need to clarify it in that way. I think it's open to the public, but instead of saying with limitations or, why not just say open to the public in accordance with applicable policy?
Okay,
And I think that language may have been included at some point because if you go back to if these were originally drafted in 2011 or 12 or whenever it was, back then, shack meetings were not required at all to be open to the
Right.
public. That was a local decision that was made back then. So, I mean, you could make that call, but I think that no longer on the table. So at this point, you could probably delete that second sentence because you're right. Once they're open to the public, they're open.
okay. Do we need to, can you stay there for one
Yeah.
second? Do we need to say something about notice of the meeting is posted and audio recorded in accordance with the law or something? Do we need to, or does it, when we say are open to the public in accordance with applicable policy, does that address that?
I think that addresses that because the law is the law.
Okay.
So you can't write the bylaws or even policy in a way to circumvent the law. So, I mean, as long as that portion of 2804 remains in place, then you're going to have to do that regardless of whether your bylaws say it or not. That's
Okay.
required.
Okay. But I still think we can delete the sentence that says a written request from any member, right?
I agree.
Okay.
Does this mean then that if you're attending the shack meeting as a non-member of the committee of shack, your audience and you're not participating, right?
guest, you're a guest.
You are a guest, you're not you can't participate in the meeting.
Right.
You can observe,
Right.
correct? Okay. That
There's
doesn't
no-
change any of that. Yeah.
There's
And
no
then we
public
maintain
I'm
the
sorry?
written request option for agenda items, right?
Say that to me one more time.
We maintain the written request option for agenda items.
We're keeping that sentence.
Right. So
Yes.
that addresses,
That, okay.
I'm not a member, but I want to talk about something, and this is how I get
Thanks,
it done.
that's what I was trying to make sure we were bridging that, yeah, thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
if we're telling people that they may attend, but they can't participate, then they can't do the agenda items.
They can do a written request, whatever that sentence, any written request for an agenda item can be considered at the discretion of the chairperson, vice chairperson, and shack facilitator.
Okay, so you
So
want to
they would
keep
have-
that there.
I'm sorry?
Oh, you want to keep that in? Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I think it's appropriate to keep that in. Do y'all agree?
Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, anything else on that? Mr. Lopez, if you'll just like sit at the chair right behind you.
Actually, if I was going to say, do you mind if, yeah, he can sit right here, right?
That's, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Does it need a name plaque, name placard, nameplate?
Now, we may not have another question for you, but you're,
At least it's a more comfortable chair.
I only speak when spoken to, so it's fine.
okay, anything else on that section 2? Okay, section 3, public hearings. Public hearings and other meetings will occur outside of the regularly scheduled shack meeting and should be approved by the Board of Trustees in advance of such meetings. I'm not sure why we have to approve that public hearing, because what I'm thinking is the shack is holding a public, they have to have 2 public meetings before they can recommend curriculum.
Right.
So should the shack be able, and that's the shack holding the meeting, that's not the board. So should the shack have the ability to schedule the meeting without getting our approval?
I don't want to micromanage these people.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I
Does
agree.
anybody want to
That's a good
micromanage
catch.
these people and what they do?
Is there anything that can be misinterpreted outside of those 2 hearings they're required to have? Is there any,
I was about to say, is there any legal ramifications to, is there anything legally that the board has to approve those meetings?
Because this was on the original bylaw.
Right, but there's nothing legally that says you have to approve those meetings. Because again, it kind of goes back to what we said earlier, the law is the law. So the public hearings that are required, the public meetings that are required on the topics set forth in 28004, you have to have those, the shack has to have those, regardless of whether they're in your bylaws or not. One thing you might consider is maybe just including public hearings and just call it that public hearings as required by law.
Yeah.
And just that way, again, if you have a change in the law as it comes out of this session or future sessions, then you're all set because you don't have to revisit it because it's anything that's going to be required by law.
That's good.
So we can take off and should be approved by the board, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So so should it say public hearings as required by law will occur or is it just public hearings as required by law?
I would
How
just call
would you
it,
do that?
yeah, public hearings as required by law.
And then that's all?
Yeah. And then the rest can be with, will occur outside of regularly scheduled meetings.
And
That's
then
fine.
this will be coordinated through the shack facilitator?
Yes, that's in accordance with,
Okay.
as long as those required meetings are held, then we're in compliance.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on that one? All right. Section 4. A quorum shall be the majority of current parent and community membership as approved by the Board of Trustees. So I have a couple of questions in here. Why is district staff not included in the quorum? And what does it mean by current parent and community membership? And I know that some of this language was from 2012 or whatever, but to me, a quorum should be the majority of the membership. Period. Because to me, district staff needs to be included in that.
Yeah.
So,
I
think-
think that,
No, go ahead.
I was going to state, yes, okay. A quorum shall be the majority of the current, that comes from the previous bylaw,
right,
but it said current membership previously. And I think the thought process was to make sure that the quorum wasn't more staff than parents and community. But basically,
But
you know, when you do the numbers,
only 8,
that's
you're
not
not
gonna
gonna get
happen.
that, right?
Yeah.
Are we, is the staff going to be allowed a vote in this situation? Are they going to be, part of the vote? Or are they just going to be assisting?
well, it was my assumption that the 8 members that are listed here as shack members would be voting members. Am I making a
I
wrong?
think the only
that's-
person that was not a voting member was the trustee. I think that's
Yes.
what we defined as the non-voting.
Correct.
Okay.
so really, if you do the numbers, each of us would get 6. That's 42. There's 42 parents and community, and that's 8 staff.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're not
So-
gonna get a quorum with staff. It's not gonna happen.
No.
So can we just change that to say a
Yes.
quorum shall be the majority of membership, or does it need to say current membership? Of the membership? Are y'all okay with that? A quorum shall be the majority of the membership? Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody, okay, that's all I had on that one. Does anybody have a question? I mean, anybody else? Okay, sorry. All right, section 5, attendance. Member attendance shall be monitored by the chairperson, who shall work with members to try and resolve any attendance problems. Non-attendance for 3 consecutive meetings, okay. My first question or comment is, I'm not sure it's the chairperson's responsibility to work with the member to resolve attendance problems. I think it might be the board member's responsibility, because if I've put a person on Shack and that person is not showing up, I think the chairperson or facilitator can contact me and say, hey, this person is not coming. And then I think it's my responsibility to reach out to that person, not the chairperson.
I would agree, but I would think that we need to add a reporting mechanism in here to ensure that that is occurring.
Well, and so I think then, so the chairperson, member attendance shall be monitored by the chairperson. So tell me what you were saying, reporting. Who shall report to
the trustee
any attendance problems?
any attendance problems and an effort to resolve said problems.
Okay. And then non-attendance of 3 consecutive meetings of either full Shack or committee within 1 year period may result in removal. There's only 4 meetings, so I am wondering if instead of 3 consecutive meetings, we should say non-attendance for 2 meetings.
I think it would depend on how many standing committee meetings we have, right? How many do they have of those meetings? And is,
I think that depends.
It depends, right, Ms. Aguilar? I mean,
It actually depends on the committee themselves. We hold a date once a month and have a place for them, but some committees opt not to have that work session if they don't have work that needs done or addressed at that time. So it kind of varies from committee to committee, if that makes sense. But we reserve a date every month for either full Shack or the standing committees.
I think the thought process behind non-attendance of 3 consecutive meetings of either Shack, since we're scratching full
Or
Shack,
standing committee.
or standing committee was to be flexible and give them opportunities. Okay, maybe I missed the Shack committee, but I'm attending
Right,
the
standing
standing committee.
Yeah.
But if they're not attending the Shack meeting or the standing committee, then that's the problem.
Mr. Lopez, I'm going to ask you something. So I went back to BDF, and it says here, each parent, legal guardian, community member selected by trustees serves at the pleasure of the board member who selected them. That's BDF local, right? Do we need to put it in bylaws? I mean, it's really up to each individual one of you based off BDF local. They're serving at your pleasure. If for some reason you don't think they're doing it, you can remove them. You put them there, you can take them off. I don't think you have to, unless your intent is to try to let the members of the Shack understand from your perspective what it is that's required of them, but I don't think you need to put it in here,
And that's how I read this, is that
right? I mean, I think,
our expectation is
Right.
that if you miss 3, that might be it. So
Well,
you serve at our pleasure,
sure.
however, there's a sort of a threshold that,
well, and
Okay.
one thing I was going to say,
because if not, then I could say, well, I just don't like this person on the Shack anymore, I'm gonna take them off.
right.
that's what BDF local says.
And I get that,
You can do it.
but I think this sort of at least gives a threshold.
Sure.
And the-
Because
the
that person might
members
be doing
some
great work, I just may have a
expectations.
personal problem with them all of a sudden, and I don't want that person to get yanked off of a good committee if they're doing good work, just because I just woke up that morning and decided I didn't want them on.
Well, so that goes back to where we talked about there needs to be removal, like
Right.
how you can. Okay, so I'm fine with 3 consecutive meetings if you think that is appropriate. I was kind of more thinking of, well, there's only 4 Shack meetings, and if they miss 3, then you're kind of
I'm
too-
with you.
it's
I
too
mean,
late to-
that's 75% that they've just
If
Right.
missed out on.
if there's only the four.
Exactly.
But
Because we
if
have
you wanna-
standing committee in here, there could be 10. And so it's,
Or, yeah.
it's two, I mean, my kid's sick and
So,
I'd leave it.
one suggestion could be that you rewrite that section a little bit to simply say that it is the expectation of the Board of Trustees that regular attendance at SHAC meetings and standing committee meetings is expected from all SHAC members. And then include something along the lines of failure to attend regular meetings or standing committee meetings may result
Okay.
in removal by the corresponding trustee.
Okay.
Mrs.
And,
Agarwal has approached
and in a
the board.
way, what you're doing there is you're not necessarily even setting a number
Okay.
of meetings, because I think to your point, Ms. Linder, you're right. You don't know how many meetings are gonna happen in a year. So to try and predict, like, oh, if you miss 3, you're out, versus, hey, this is a year where we're having 12 meetings because we got a lot of work to do. This way,
No,
it's just.
like that
Yeah, it's
language.
just, you all know, right? You know it when you see it. When you know you have a member that's not doing what they're expected to do.
Yeah.
And Ms. Aguilar, may I ask you a quick question? I don't want to do something that puts an undue burden on you, but you're taking attendance at these each time, right? I mean, it's relatively easy, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So my question then to the board, you know, we give you all different reports each month, right? Do you just want us to just include in your packet each month, here's the attendance at the shack? That way then there's not, you're never surprised, you're just gonna see it each month. We'll just slip it in your packet back there. You can take a look at it and then you'll know. And then to Mr. Lopez's point, you'll know it when you see it, right? You're like, golly, this person isn't coming. I think I need to approach them. That way then you're taking out the chair or the facilitator out of it. It's really up to you all. And then you can kind of deal with it as you see fit.
I like that.
Does that,
Yes,
is
I
that
agree.
relatively? 'Cause
Absolutely.
We'll just set up the cadence that every month you just send it to Peggy. We put it in the packet and you have it.
Absolutely.
It's just done.
And Ms. Williams, all I was going to mention was I think when we had the conversation about this, what we were trying to get at is the old bylaws didn't seem to include those standing committee meetings. So out of 4 meetings, you could miss 2 or 3. Well, you could basically never come. And so what we were trying to do is emphasize the importance of being at the standing committee meetings. But I think what Mr. Lopez has suggested is a great way to do that. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on attendance? All right. Section 6, members shall attempt to reach decisions by consensus. However, if a clear consensus cannot be obtained, members shall reach a decision by majority vote. What happens in the case of a tie? Who gets the deciding vote? And if you read further toward the back, when it talks about the roles of the chairperson and the vice chair, they are not voting members. So could they vote in the case of a tie, or do we need to address this?
According to Robert's rules, technically, the chairperson only votes in the case of a tie.
Okay, so, but do we need to say that?
Well, may I just push something out for y'all to consider? It doesn't matter if you end in a tie. Exactly. They're not making a decision.
Well,
folks.
that's true.
They are simply advisory. So if it ends as a tie, we would come and report to, ladies and gentlemen, it ended in a tie.
that's
And
what
then
I would
that is
prefer
something
that.
for you to consider, like, gosh, it was kind of split, but, you know, I think you
Okay.
gotta remember the shack is here solely to advise you. They're not gonna ever make a decision. That's up to you all, right? That would be my suggestion.
Okay, good point.
That's a good point, but I would kind of like to know what the majority agreed upon.
But you know, again, I
And we
think,
could take that into consideration.
but I
I mean,
think
we're
that-
taking everything into
right,
consideration.
but I think that piece of, if it's 50-50, you can see that it's very split. Like, you've got people on either side, right? But it's up to you all.
If
It's your
it's a
committee.
majority by one, I don't know that that's as compelling as saying it was a tie.
Yeah, it is to me.
Because it negates the other votes, the other feelings that way. Which brings me to, I mean, the chairperson and facilitator shall record all votes. I am uncomfortable with anyone having to publicly say their vote in this situation. Our votes are sacred, and I would prefer that people's votes are their votes.
I was
And they
gonna-
don't have to be,
I was gonna ask that same question. When we say shall record all votes, did we just mean a, 25 to 24 vote? Or did we mean Ms. Huey voted this way, Ms. Williams voted this way, Ms. Cronin voted this way, and so on? Because I think that gets a little dangerous with these
Yes.
standing committees with the shack itself.
So what
I-
was the intent for record all votes? Because y'all added that.
So where is it?
I'm sorry,
item
section
six.
6,
section
the very
6,
last
the vote,
sentence.
decision-making.
It's in blue.
I mean, obviously, it's on public record, so
Right, it is public record.
if people
Right,
want to,
section
I don't know how they do their votes, and I'm not going to tell them how to do the votes, but
Proxy voters.
No
I just want to
decision,
know
oh, yeah.
what the intent with recording the
Very last
votes
sentence
was.
Oh, in blue, the chairperson and facilitator shall record all votes. So what typically gets voted on using ballots? I mean, it's not a voice vote.
Oh, and
It's
that's-
not,
I
I mean,
guess
we
that's a-
vote all the time.
Correct.
And it's a public meeting. The
Correct.
shack is a public meeting.
Correct.
So in here, and again, this was taken from the old ones. So proxy voting and absentee, it says absentee ballots shall not be permitted. Each member is entitled. So what
Well, y'all-
vote would we be recording anyway? That's not a voice vote or a hand vote or,
I might have jumped the gun coming up here. I
No.
just assumed that
No,
question
not
was
at
for
all.
me. In my almost a year experience as the facilitator for SHAT, the main votes were for the textbook and which textbook publisher they wanted to recommend. And then other than that, it has just been for the chairperson.
And those are done by ballot or by hand raise?
They were done
or-
by ballot.
Okay. And I guess that's clarification I wasn't aware of. When I read this and it says shall record all votes, I wanted to ensure that we're not having each individual member of the shack, their name with a yay or nay next to it.
That's-
It's
'Cause I
been a
don't think
blank
that's-
sheet of
I don't
paper
think
and
that's
they write
appropriate.
on the publisher, not their name. They weren't asked to put their name on the document.
Good.
So I don't know why that was added, and can we just take that off? Because I don't think we need to, to David's point, I don't think we need to record the individual votes. And we get, you tell us what the votes are based on, we got that huge proclamation thing with all those charts and everything, so.
Yes, we provided a tally of the votes, who
Yeah.
voted for which publisher, how many people abstained, how many people said nothing at all. So we gave all the tallies for the
so
different
when you
votes.
say who voted,
Not names, just the
Not
number.
names, just,
Not names.
10 voted for this.
10 voted for McGraw-Hill, 20 voted for Goodhart-Wilcox, 10 abstained from voting.
and it is recorded, right?
So that was recorded, included in the minutes and included in the packet when we presented the recommendation to you all.
So I think it's just the intent of what was meant by that, because I think to your point, Ms. Huey, earlier, if there's 50 members, right, and 26 was the majority and 24 was the dissenters, you'd probably want to know that as a trustee. While 26 was your majority,
Period.
24 that's a pretty tight vote, right?
But
So
I don't
maybe
want to
the-
know who it is by name.
No, but I
No.
think, but to the point is that, we're gonna collect yay and nay votes. We're gonna report that to you. here's what they voted for.
I think when I
Not
read
by
this,
name.
though, when I read this, it sounds like it's like roll calling,
A record
Correct.
vote.
a record vote.
It-
So I think, I mean, we have a process in place where they vote, it gets documented, we see the overall how it's done. So this was added, so I think we can just strike that. I don't know that
Or,
that needs.
or if it needs to be, it could be the chairperson and facilitator shall report all vote totals. Shall report the vote totals.
I like the word report instead of record.
I think record refers back to the Roberts Rules of Order, and a recorded vote is a name vote. And that may be where that it comes in for you and I. So,
So can we say report?
Yes, my suggestion would be for that to read, the chairperson and facilitator shall report the final tally of all votes
In aggregate, yeah.
to the Board of Trustees. Right? And that's information that would be provided to you all in your packets, or when Shaq comes to make a presentation to you all. Because again, yeah, as Dr. Micah pointed out, it's purely advisory. They are not in any way a final decision maker.
Right.
You all are going to be the final decision makers. So I think the ultimate information about a 26, 24, whatever the numbers are, I think that will be useful information to you. But I mean, really, I think your obligation is going to be not just to vote necessarily based on that, but to take that as one piece of information that you all would consider when you're going to vote on whatever is being recommended to you by the SHAC.
Do we get to hear both sides when they come in, about, for example, you have two, I'm just pulling these numbers out of the air. You have two separate, books. Do we have two separate presentations so that we know what is, the differences between the two,
We were
books?
given the materials and we reviewed them. So,
we got
Okay.
the books.
Yeah.
So you have the
So,
book, okay.
so they will give us their recommendation, whatever came out of the council.
Okay.
But we were given all the material of both things both options that were
That were
provided.
recommended.
Were
Perfect.
recommended, yeah.
Okay, that just a question.
So.
Boxes
a lot
of
lot of good
materials.
nighttime reading for you.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to say the chairperson and facilitator shall report the final tally of all votes
To the board.
to the board.
Yep.
Which is already being done anyway. It's just, my concern is I don't want anyone to feel that they are being identified by their vote.
Right, and that's why it's just final tally.
Report
That's
the
it.
final tally of all votes. Okay. All right. Anything on 7? All right, moving down to membership. Item B, okay, hang on, I have lots of little things.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No.
This is kind of back on the previous. One question is this: is it important to record who actually voted to make sure that there is no fraud involved, or anything? Maybe somebody is, casting a ballot that they shouldn't be casting, or, maybe they're, should we know this in?
I don't, personally, I don't think so, because I think that creates, again, these are volunteers we're asking to sit on a committee, and they're not beholden to anyone necessarily. I mean,
And
they're
it's
allowed to
not
vote
like
the
a
way they want to vote.
6-week process, right, for a vote? It's same meeting. It's very tight. Present.
I was just, the process that we used was we numbered those ballots. And for the textbook adoption, we knew it was McGraw-Hill or Goodhart Wilcox. Those were our options. We numbered them and we knew how many we had in attendance, and we made sure that was the exact number we got back. So we just kind of handled that to make sure that there weren't any guest voting. Nobody voted twice. We kept those numbers, if that kind of makes sense. I don't know if that.
That sounds good.
Just as long as there's an accounting of it, so that there
Checks and
again,
balances.
checks and balances, that's always good. I understand the need for, people to, have their vote protected, but we just need to make sure that we're not doing something, or we're, you know, something is being misrepresented. That's important.
Yeah.
And
On
just
our
remember,
ballots,
I
there-
think in the past, these weren't recorded, and they're now recorded. You can, you know, so you're going to be able to make sure that wasn't.
We had
wasn't
50
done.
ballots numbered, and we knew we still have all 50 of those ballots. 15 of them are blank because those people weren't in attendance. And so we were able to say there are 35 people in attendance. We have 35 ballots that have something on them, whether it's abstain or they actually put something. And then we knew how many we still had blank. So we made sure to account for one ballot for every person who was in attendance. Does that make?
Yes,
Okay.
makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay, so membership, section 1. A, parents, legal guardians must have a child enrolled in the district, reside in the single-member district they are representing, and not be an employee of the district. B, the majority of SHAC will consist of parents of students currently enrolled in the district who are not employed by the district. I think B is a duplicate of A.
Kind of
I'm
redundant.
not sure why. Can we delete, does everybody agree we could delete B?
I think because we started specifying, it does become a duplicate because BDF local is now clarifying that it's majority.
Okay,
Parent.
so, yes, we're gonna delete B. Does everybody agree to that?
Just a curious question. I noticed in some documents it says custodial parent. Is there,
Oh, I didn't see that.
well,
I
it
think
was
that
in,
got marked, and parent or guardian is the term that was used to replace it.
yeah, and there was one document that I was reading that specified whether it was, I've read so much of this stuff, I don't remember if it was in 28 or what it was, but it said custodial parent, and that kind of stuck out to me.
So is
It's-
a grandparent considered custodial?
They would be the legal
Not
guardian.
necessarily, no, they don't.
No,
Not necessarily legal
not
guardian.
necessarily.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
So there are a number of avenues by which a parent can have their rights altered, or they can surrender some of their rights. As an example, we have instances in the district where a student may be residing with grandparents such that they're able to use the grandparents' address to attend our schools. That doesn't make the grandparents necessarily custodial, but that can happen. There can be power of attorney forms involved. I think there's also, of course, instances where parents may have their custodial rights terminated or limited in some way due to some other court proceeding. So I think that's probably what contemplated it in there. But I think your language in here about it being parents of current students in the district, I think that's consistent
Yeah, I don't
with
have
the
any
law.
problem with it. I was just,
Yeah.
it was a curious question as to why that there would be some,
Yeah, and
Okay.
that may have been it, is just the idea that it has to be someone who has some sort of custodial rights and that haven't been limited by other court order.
okay.
Okay, so then my next question is, do we need to define employee? Because you know, we had that conversation where some SHAC members were subs, and
Subs.
we had said that sub was not considered an employee. So do we need to somehow define employee, or?
I think in the end, that's really up to y'all. I mean, if you want to, for example, carve out a substitute teacher who only is going to work on occasion, you may say that doesn't meet your definition of employee, but that's really up to y'all.
Well, I think you defined it for us when
I-
that question was asked previously. Do we need to?
So I guess my question is,
Put it
does
in-
that need to be in here
in-
or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. I mean, it's the definition of employee contemplates someone who is sort of a either full or part-time employee. They're beholden to you in some way. I mean, a substitute is just a temporary and may or may not work. Now, in this day and age, given staff shortages, I'm pretty sure substitutes get a considerable amount of work. But in prior years, such people may get work, they may not get work. It's fleeting, it's temporary. We take the position, for example, that substitute teachers are not entitled to unemployment if they don't get the opportunity to work. So under those types of circumstances, certainly I would say that they're not qualified or they don't constitute employees. But you all can make that sort of decision, I think, on whether you want to allow that or you simply want to say, you know what, any kind of employment relationship with the district, they're not going to be able to be on the shack.
I don't think we should eliminate substitutes from being on shack. I mean, that concerns me. They're not an employee and they are a parent. So that's two of the criteria right there.
Okay, so my question is, do we need
Yeah.
to say something specifically in here about it or not? That's
I would say not.
not, okay.
I have a question, and something just clicked. This is on something prior to this issue. If the trustee is not allowed to vote, okay, this is back on casting ballots. Why do we have 50 ballots? Shouldn't there be 49 ballots if the trustee is that, sorry, I know I'm splitting hairs here, but
Last year, the trustee was not considered a member. So we have 50 members plus one trustee. That trustee was never counted in the 50.
okay, gotcha. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. It was going, me, yeah.
So I have a question on C and to your point, Ms. Grono, the differentiation of employees. In C, they don't have to be a parent, they can be a teacher. And if we are giving community members who are teachers appointments to the committee and they're a full-time
Employee.
substitute
Oh.
who's not an employee but spends the majority of their time working as a substitute, to me, that's very gray.
That is one of the things that I had on there, is that we said parents couldn't be an employee, but yet we've got, teachers, administrators that can be under the community member section. So I don't know, Mr.
Well, remember that the majority of your
Is
shack
parents in
must
that.
be parents, guardians,
Okay.
right? So you as a board can certainly decide to appoint current teachers, current administrators to be on the shack, but you can't have, let's say, oh, well, we're going to appoint 26 out of the 50 to be current teachers who are also parents.
Right, okay.
So that's the distinction there, is you can appoint those categories, but the majority still needs to be just parents, guardians, without any sort of employment relationship with the district,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
How many full-time subs would you say that we have in the district?
Off the top of my head right now, every school has a full-time sub that we've provided for the last few years, and then after that, I mean, I guess it would be full-time. Is what do you classify as full-time? How many? I mean, we've got some subs that work almost every day of the year. Right,
We have
Mr.
our
Mendes?
full-time subs that
Right.
were funded by
Yep.
ESSER, that we have about 65 of those. And then 65 to 70, just kind of depends. And then we have, I think, 1,000.
No, but I know. But how many of those subs, Mr. Jimenez, work more than, say, 75% of the days? I know it's quite a few. We used to recognize it. It's more than what I realized. Let's put it that way. There's a lot. There's a lot of them that work. Remember, we've got about 4,400 teaching positions in the school district, and we just have some that they fill them routinely, or a campus. I can tell you when I was at Harris, I had 3 subs that I pretty much saw every day, because if they weren't in your room, they were in your room or his room or her. I mean, you just kind of got used to them, and you just wanted them there, and they were awesome. And so you just and so they really almost turned into a full-time employee.
Okay, so on C, my question is, how we start identifying teachers, administrators, healthcare professionals, business, or others is outlined in 28.004. And then I think at the top it says
BDF local.
BDF local. Should we, since we've started listing the groups, should we list all the groups? Or should we say as outlined? I guess my point is, we list some and then we say, go to this for the next ones.
I think in the last meeting, we were talking about BDF local, we sort of shied away from that. The listing of them just said refer to 28004, and not even the section.
Yeah, and
I think that's
say-
in line with what Mr. Lopez has been saying. That way, then you're not having to come back here to add something new to it.
So then we should scratch through teachers, administrators, health, and just say
I think so.
as
Board
outlined
of
in.
Trustees
as
may-
outlined in 28004D, as
Again,
currently
that was
written
from
or
the
may
older version.
be
No,
amended.
no, I know.
You got it?
Yeah. And I just want to make sure, because in the version of BDF local that I had seen, there was a reference to that issue where it's cited to 28004 subsection D6 only.
Yeah.
And so D6 would limit you, that I believe is business leaders. So is your intent to make it all the categories that are listed in
I
28004D?
thought
I don't
that
know
was
if that got
crossed
changed
through.
on the version that's before y'all, but the version that I saw of BDF local referred to D6. I think it had it originally as 6D, but I think the intent was to
It
be
was-
D6.
It's crossed through on mine.
Okay, so it's just D.
28.004D.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really all you need, because if the legislature should change that, they're gonna just add additional categories within subsections in there.
That was me who put the 6 because I couldn't follow the outline in
Got it.
28.004, and I'm like, is this section 6 or section
Yeah,
3 or
it
section
gets confusing.
D6?
Got
But
it.
the intent was to have all of the categories
categories,
listed.
okay.
So I think this
It's easy to follow
clarifies
for
that.
about 2 pages, and then you have to like tape
It
them all
is.
together and make sure it all lines up.
Yes, and it gets confusing, especially since there were parts that were effective only between this period and this period, and then effective after this date, so yeah, it gets really confusing. But for that piece, you just want to have it read 28004D as it is currently written or may hereafter be amended. That way it covers you in the future.
Okay. So when we talk about these groups in 28.004, like the business community or healthcare professionals or law enforcement or whatever, should we somehow put in here where they need to reside? Like whether it's the person, whether it's the business that needs to be within our boundaries, or whether it's the person representing the business that's within our boundaries. And somewhere, and I don't remember where it is, and maybe it's BDF, we say that the parents have to be in the SMD, but the community members just need to be within the boundaries of the district.
And I think that
So-
was a discussion last time, was that they just needed to reside in the district boundaries.
Okay, so if you work for a business that, trying to think, what's not with, so you live within Northeast, but
Correct.
the business that you're representing is
In somewhere
Port
else.
San Antonio. As long as you are living in the district, okay.
That's how I understood the conversation in the last meeting.
So does that need to be specified here in the bylaws is my question. It is in BDF? Okay, so as long as it's in BDF, it doesn't have to be in bylaws? Because I was,
It
Yes.
says community members must be 18 years of age or older and reside within the NEISD boundaries.
okay.
Is
All
that-
right.
Is that sufficient, you think?
That's
Yeah, I guess I'm
Okay.
just making sure it doesn't need, because I was thinking earlier, we were talking about how the policy is strategic and the bylaws is tactical, and so I was just,
Yeah.
Now,
And I think, y'all, that's why my suggestion earlier about uploading this as an exhibit into BDF, so that you're not looking at one document minus the other. You're looking at both documents because they complement one another. Does that make sense?
yes, so just to be clear, I just want to make sure for my own frame, of reference. I could put a STEM parent in my community, on my, no?
community members are not parents.
Well,
Community
see,
mem-
I don't really like that, because I think what we're doing, because my schools have STEM, and they have, other things, so I really don't want to, limit this.
So I think what we talked about last time is that wherever that parent lives, so let's say the parent lives in District 6, they could sit on SHAC for that SMD.
Well, the problem is perhaps that SMD doesn't want that parent to sit in their, so I'm looking at it, they would by definition meet the criteria for a community member, because I just don't want my STEM parents to feel as if they're being put in the corner.
Well, I understand, but I think the community members are following these, this list from 28.004 that is the teachers, the counselors, administrators, healthcare professionals, business community, law enforcement, senior citizens, clergy, nonprofit.
And I think I raised the concern about parents, but I think we came to the point, that's why we just referenced that list. And I don't think we specify whether it can be a parent or a not parent.
Right, because if they meet another one of those categories.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we ultimately said, let's just reference that list, and then it's up to your
But I think
trustee.
remember in BDF, that first draft, it had, and I didn't bring the first draft, but I think community members, it said must be 18 years of age or older, and I think it said something about parents, and we crossed that off.
It doesn't say that they cannot be, and it doesn't say that they
Yeah.
can be. It just doesn't say.
I think we
In
should
the-
just be flexible on that. I think
I
that,
would agree.
I don't think that we should, as a trustee, I want that flexibility. I don't want to be told that, oh, suddenly my STEM parents or my magnet parents no longer qualify. They still reside within our district. They qualify with that. Frankly, I
So are
want
they
as
gonna
many
meet-
parents on my shack. I want as many parents as possible, because frankly, they are the ones with skin in the game. Their kids are here. They are in these schools. These are the people that we have to please. And I want my parents happy.
Well, you
So-
also have parents at lots of other schools that are not magnet that you're putting on right now, right?
Right,
for-
that's correct. However, in my frame of mind, the parents are the ones with the children in the schools.
So the parents who have children at one of your magnet schools, in order to be a community member, do they fall into one of these categories?
Well, under the 4 that I have currently, they live and reside in my SMD3
Okay.
district. Okay, that's great, all right? The community members, I believe firmly that this should be at our, what we desire. And it doesn't mean that we should have to limit our community members to include only those who are not parents, because I think you can have other categories. And frankly, I don't want to, because I have STEM parents who would be amazing on
Matter of
this
fact,
committee.
I picked up one of your STEM parents after you removed her from your list.
That's great. I'm so grateful that you
So,
did.
just
I'm
wanted
grateful that
to
you did.
point that out.
Okay, I'm grateful that you did, and that's wonderful, and I commend you for that.
Well, and weren't we saying that we don't usually have people just lining up with their hands raised? So we don't want to eliminate a volunteer who's willing to volunteer if they meet all the criteria and just happen to be a parent as well.
And I think, to Ms. Landry's point, I think that was a discussion last meeting that we referenced 28004 in that list of professionals, and I think we tabled it to maybe put in the bylaws, because we didn't put it in the policy to say we would prefer that the 2 community members fall within one of those categories. And whether it's a parent or not a parent, that as long as they met one of those, that would suffice.
I think we need to make sure that we follow 28.004 in those categories, but, so my question is, so you have say you have a STEM parent, could that parent, also fall into one of these categories?
That's what
And
we
then
need.
that would be a way to put that person, or to appoint that person. So say that parent works in the healthcare field, or they work in law enforcement, or they're a member of the clergy.
That-
So they're representing that group, and they're not there as a parent, because we already have the 4 parents, but they're representing that group.
I mean, they may happen
Regardless
to be a
of
parent,
If they're a
but
parent,
Right.
right, right. So we have the flexibility. I don't want us to turn down volunteers because you're a member of the clergy, you fit the community member standard, you live in the district, but you're a parent somewhere.
See, I don't like that either. I don't like disqualifying somebody because they're a parent.
No, I'm not saying disqualify them. I'm saying fit them into one of these categories.
Right, right. And I think the
Which is what-
conversation was they couldn't be a parent, but we're saying that the parental status shouldn't eliminate them from qualifying if they fit the other categories.
Right, I feel that we've got, like you said, we've got the 4 parents. We need those professionals. We need those community members that are professionals in those 2 selections. No matter what field it's in, we need those voices too. And I am fine with them being parents. I think that's just an added benefit. I don't think that that's the case. I think we need those administrators, healthcare professionals, business, whatever else is in 28.0. I know it's a massive list.
But not to exclude them if they're parents.
Ms. Groner,
Exactly,
because
they're
exactly.
I just wanted to be clear, I did not
Yes.
want to exclude any
No.
parent who
Yeah.
wants to serve
So
at
I don't
all.
think it's saying, oh, you're a parent, I can't appoint you, but it's
They
saying,
need to fit
oh,
into one of these
you
categories.
happen
We
to
need to
have,
fill these
right,
categories
you
too.
happen to be a parent, so, are you a healthcare professional, are you a member of the clergy, does that person fit also in one of these categories?
so in BDF local that we just approved, this is what we changed from the last meeting. We said these slots can include any community member within any ISD boundaries, and we scratched out to include additional parents.
Right.
To just do an all-encompassing in categories as defined in Texas Education Code 28004D.
Right.
Yes,
And so that leaves it open to,
provides the flexibility.
But they need to
But
fit
it
into
has
one
to
of
be
these
a community
categories.
member.
correct.
But
Right.
it,
And I think, and Mr. Lopez, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've gone down this path before. I think from the intent of the law with this, y'all, is that parents are parents. It's very clear in law. The majority of your shack has to be parents. I think what they're trying to guard against is, oh, we're going to call this person 3 different things and they're going to count in multiple categories. Is they're trying to protect from the sense of, look, ladies and gentlemen, make sure your shack is the majority parents. Now, after that, you can include some other folks if you wish, but you don't have to, right? And here's some categories you can consider to choose from. Now, if it's an officer, if they're a law enforcement person, and oh, by the way, they also happen to be a parent, then put them on. They still meet, but they're not counted in the parent category. Do you see? That's the differentiation here. By the law, they're going to say, no, you're putting them under as community. So they don't double count community and parent. You don't get to serve double roles. Does this make sense?
Yeah, but what if you're 4, for example, you have your 4 parents, but then you have, I just don't like that thing that we struck off, and I can't believe I didn't scream about that. Maybe I didn't catch it, okay, on that deal. I don't like that. I don't like being limited. If I have somebody who's dynamic, who I know will do an incredible job, I do not want that person to be eliminated because he or she is STEM, he or she is a parent. I know this person has or he or she will have a good head on the shoulders, okay? So I don't want to be limited.
Well, I don't think it's limiting you. That person can be a
But
parent.
they may not fit in all these categories. And so now I am eliminating this person because they don't fit in the little box,
Yeah.
okay? And.
But I think that's what we all agreed on at the last
But
meeting.
the box is pretty broad.
Yeah.
There's quite a.
It's
it-
not,
It's a really a lot of,
Huge box.
it's not limited, it's about at least 20 things maybe, I don't know. what- you
yeah,
have it in
it's,
front of you.
it's a long list, and
I
it,
just don't like anybody being, eliminated because they don't check a box per se.
Okay, can we move on? Sorry. I mean, because I think we understand, but I think we all agreed when we made that change that it would, you're not going to exclude, if they fit one of these categories, and they're a parent, then that's fine,
yes.
right? Okay. Membership at the top of page 3. It says, membership of the shack will strive to reflect the geographic, ethnic, gender, and economic diversity of the district. Specific quotas shall not be applied for membership. How, I know this was in here before, and that's not something that's added, but I'm just wondering how we would collect that information. How would we know that we're doing that?
To me, this says that there's no intended bias. Not specifically that we're collecting data, but our purpose is not to be biased or to try to handpick a certain ethnicity, a certain gender, a certain economic diversity.
So, should we
Because it
look
says
for
will
those
strive, you
things?
mean?
I mean,
Because it says will strive, or it did,
And I see it as visual, if you will, because first of all, it says strive. So it's something we would like to do. And if I'm at a shack and everybody looks like my background, that's not diverse, I can just observe and say, why is everybody a black female? That's not representing the district. So I pretty much see it as, no, we're not gonna have you do a demographic, check box or anything like that, but.
so is this in then just kind of like a reminder of what
Yeah.
we should be doing?
That's
Is
how I
that-
see it.
It's kind of like a promise statement, if you will. Like, this is our intention. We're not intending to be any sort of, we're not intending to stack the deck or whatever you may call it. This is our intention. We're not going to go out and take numbers and get your blood type and make sure that you fit the certain criteria of each and every category, but that is our intent. Is to
We're not gonna ask everyone for an income statement to see their economic diversity.
well,
like
so I
blood type.
So I
I'm
guess
questioning its
though,
need
as,
then, yeah.
as a trustee who's selecting parents to fit the, and all these other things, are we imposing upon ourselves to try and follow that?
I was about to say, D is ultimately our responsibility,
Yeah.
because we're the ones selecting the people for this council.
Right.
That's true.
And if we're not doing a good job understanding our community and that there's more than just myself and the people that I hang out with, then we're not doing a good job at all.
So why do we even have it in there on this thing?
Well, I think it's a good reminder that we need to make sure we're serving.
Do we really need to be reminded?
Yes.
Well, I think it's
Maybe
more of
we
a-
don't.
It's more of a commitment to our community.
That, I would agree with that.
Okay. Okay, anything on section 2? Section 3, confirmation by Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees shall annually appoint all members to the shack. There is verbiage in BDF under membership that I think we might want to just use that same verbiage that's on BDF, and it says, yeah.
Or just say as per.
And actually, I
as
think it
per
says
BDF
shall,
local.
it says shall be formally approved, and this says shall annually appoint. I just think we should be consistent in the verbiage.
What about just put confirmation by the Board of Trustees as per BDF local?
Okay?
That way, if we need to change local for
Mr.
some reason, we don't need to change the bylaw.
Or take it out entirely.
Or take
Because
it out?
BDF local already
Covers it.
governs it.
Okay, so
Okay.
take it out?
So
Take
I
out
don't
three.
think you need that section anymore.
Okay.
Yay.
And then on section 4 vacancies, the same thing. On BDF, we say, shall select a replacement for approval by the Board of Trustees at a duly called meeting. And here we say, will be appointed in accordance with BDF local. Is that,
Can we just take out vacancies then, and because it's covered in local, just like before?
Yeah, my suggestion here would be that any, because of course, these bylaws were written before you had a BDF local in
Right.
detail, right?
Yeah.
So there's no need to be duplicative. So where a subject has already been covered by BDF local, I don't think you need to duplicate it in your bylaws. So as far as, if you've addressed vacancies, if we've, addressed any of these other topics, you just take it out, because it's already governed by
okay,
BDF local.
so we can take vacancies out.
And same thing with the next one too.
Well, we don't really have change in member status in BDF local. It's just in, so do we put it
Well,
in?
well, except it says that the, okay, it's in, as long as they meet the eligibility requirements. Yeah, okay.
So I guess then that's the question, do we put this section 5 in BDF local? I guess we can't, because we've already approved it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I
Okay,
think
we'll
it-
just leave it like
I think
it
it
is.
would make sense
Okay.
having it here. It's a little more specific than.
Okay,
Although on that, I would say we need to change the word "the" in front of, it says, if the status of a member changes, the word "the," is that supposed to be capitalized or under? Should just be
Oh.
the word "the."
A syntax error.
the Board of Trustees will be notified by the SHAC chairperson and/or facilitator. Okay. And should that be the facilitator or the chairperson that notifies of the, like if, I'm guessing what this means is, let's say a SHAC member is no longer a parent, and so they need to get off SHAC. Is it the chairperson who lets the board member know, or is it the facilitator? I know
Well,
it
it
says
probably-
and/or.
Probably should say or, because what if there's a situation where the chairperson is not available, there's not a, like right now, there's not a chairperson, so maybe it should say chairperson or instead of and or.
Okay, I don't know. What do y'all think?
I would think it would just be the facilitator, but that's,
Okay, so the Board of Trustees will be notified by the facilitator.
Is the facilitator okay with that?
So the facilitator keeps record of any
Because-
changes in member status?
Yes. Okay, conflict of interest. No individual, oh, I'm sorry, did anybody have anything else on that one? No individual shall be nominated for or hold a position on SHAC if that individual has a direct pecuniary or other direct interest. I don't know what y'all mean by other direct interest. Because that was added.
Well, if there's there's some other conflict of interest, something that they could gain.
So do we need to define it, or, I mean, because I was reading this and I was like, well, what do you mean by other direct interest?
Well, that would be so broad, because you don't
Okay.
know, perhaps, for example, and I'm not saying this is happening, okay, no. Let's say somebody knew, one of these textbook, companies knew that, Mary Bell was on, the SHAC, and so they go to Mary Bell and say, hey, guess what? I'll give you I'll give you this great vacation,
if you'll vote for mine. You know, that sort of thing.
Okay, so, and then it's incumbent, I guess, upon the, I mean, how would we know that?
That is a problem.
Or say a conflict could.
Oh, here comes
Oh.
Miss.
I was gonna say a conflict could be someone actually working for, or they're employed by the textbook, company or others. That could be a direct, conflict.
Okay.
Or other direct interests.
Anyone who reviews and makes any kind of recommendation on textbooks or curriculum in the past textbook and what we will do in the curriculum that we're going to need to adapt coming ahead does have to complete a conflict of interest form where they have to declare those things.
Okay.
Both
Thank
our
you.
teachers and SHAC will do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on that? Officers. The SHAC shall elect a chairperson and vice chairperson from parent members of existing council. Each will serve a 2-year term. Should we say that the chairperson and vice chairperson should have at least 1 year of service on SHAC? Instead of being a brand-new person to SHAC?
That's a
I
great
think that's
idea. Is it gonna be
reasonable.
doable right now?
Well, you've got existing
folks.
people on there.
Okay.
I think that
it's
would be,
important to have service on, because this
Yes.
is a complex.
Okay, so should we just say, shall elect a chairperson and vice chairman from parent members of the existing council with at least 1 year of service, or Mr. Lopez, how?
I'd almost prefer 2, but I'll settle for 1.
Well,
I
I,
mean,
no,
that-
one I think is,
Yeah.
I think
That's, yeah, I
helpful.
mean, you're well within your rights as a board to make that decision. So legally, the 28004 is going to be silent on that. The only issue is that, of course, the chairperson has to be a parent.
right,
But outside of that, whatever selection criteria that y'all want to utilize in terms of years of service, that's something that would be left to you all.
okay.
So if y'all want to make it 1 year, 2 years, no years, it's up to y'all
I
as a
think at
body
least
corporate.
1 year, at least.
So could we say should have as opposed to must have, in case you get into a situation
I
where,
just thought about that.
Preferred.
If the people that do have that experience either don't want it or for some reason decide they can't serve and need to come off. I think we should encourage that as much as we can.
I don't feel comfortable mandating it because we could get into a situation where it's not doable. So if we say should have,
Or
or it's
with a
preferred that
preferred.
they have 1 year or 2 years experience, then that gives them some flexibility.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm sure, we shouldn't have so much turnover that you wouldn't have somebody that has at least 1 year of service. But what you're saying is that person might not want to be the chairperson?
I mean, that
I-
could be a situation.
I just feel, I would hate to see someone new come on SHAC and then take on a leadership role that they have no experience in. That's just, that's a complex situation with so many,
I mean, that person could have experience on boards, but not
And
on
other,
shack.
right, so a new,
That's transferable.
new parent to the
You know,
district who served on SHAC in another district doesn't have the year of experience in our district.
Okay, so the SHAC shall elect a chairperson and vice chairperson from parent members of the existing council who the SHAC will elect instead of shall? I mean, how do you want to do that to say from parent members of the existing council with at least 1 year of service?
Maybe we just make it a separate sentence. The preferred electee will have 1 year of service.
Oh, yeah.
The person chosen, or the chairperson and vice chairperson should have at least 1 year of service. Just make that a new sentence.
Well, if we make it should,
Oh, I
it's
thought you
not.
said.
Like, yeah, I think
Preferred.
it depends on whether you're gonna make it a requirement or whether it's a recommendation.
Well, can we say the SHAC may elect a chairperson and vice chair from parent members of the existing council with
Well-
at least 1 year of service? Instead of saying shall elect, say may elect?
Well, they still have to.
Well, they
elect.
definitely have to elect.
Yeah, so.
Right? So that you have to have them select a chairperson and a vice chairperson.
Right.
But the next piece, I would recommend, is, I think it was Ms. Landry that said it, you'd have a separate sentence
Okay.
with any criteria that you want to include for election. So I guess the first question for the board is, do you want to make a 1 year service period mandatory or preferred? Because I think that will affect the language you'd put in.
I would like to make it mandatory, but I don't think we can reasonably,
I don't think that's
realistically
practical.
say that, yes.
I would
agree.
say preferred. to
Yeah, so
ensure
then your next
flexibility.
sentence would be, the board's preference is for the chairperson and vice chairperson to have 1 year of SHAC service wherever possible.
Okay.
That way it doesn't make it mandatory.
All right, anything else on page 3? Page 4.
Did you have something?
On page 4?
Yeah. I don't know if you were getting to it or if you were waiting for.
I was reading what my little note was. Do you have something? Go ahead.
I do on the second bullet, on top of page 4, says work directly with the executive committee. Oh, wait, who is this in regard to? Sorry. The chairperson. Says work directly with the executive committee, and then we crossed out vice chairperson and the facilitator.
And I think it's because in the next paragraph, we define executive committee as chairperson, vice chairperson, standing commission
Oh, okay.
chairpersons, and
Got it.
SHAC
I
facilitators.
missed that. Reading comprehension. And then the bullet that was added right above B in blue, present the annual SHAC report, presentation and recommendation of Board of Trustees with assistance from the facilitator. Is that usually the chair that presents that, or is it you, Ms. Aguilar, that presents it with assistance from the chairperson?
I believe historically, the facilitator, or I guess it was the coordinator previously, presented it. So that, I think, is new language to this one.
So I didn't know if it made more sense for the facilitator to present this with support and assistance from the chairperson, considering the chairperson is a community member or a parent, a parent who has been appointed to this position and not necessarily they may not be a presenter. And Ms. Aguilar does a fantastic job, so.
Yeah, so
No,
was there a reason to say that it's the chairperson with assistance of facilitator? For
I
that
don't
to
think
be
there was
added?
any particular reason. I think the focus was on presenting the annual SHAC report and
So
presentation
maybe
recommendations.
I might suggest we say assist presenting
Presentation.
the annual SHAC report presentation and recommendations at the Board of Trustees meeting.
Yeah, and I would almost strike through presentation, because you're saying present the annual SHAC report
Oh,
and recommendations at the Board of
recommendations.
Trustees meeting.
I agree with that.
Was the report different from the presentation? Because the report could just be, are we talking about typically the PowerPoint presentation, or like an annual report is usually in
There was
booklet form?
something added that said that there must be a presentation along with the report, wasn't there?
But I guess it's saying
Yeah.
present the annual SHAC report, so I'm thinking that is the when you say present, that's the presentation.
But that could limit the presentation to just the report.
Where, I don't remember what needs to be presented. Where was that?
I don't remember where I saw
Was it in
that.
28.004?
There's a reference in 28004 to that information.
Do you recall,
Let me pull it
Mr.
up.
Lopez, if it's, says it has to be a,
I don't think it says, move my mic, that it has to be, that it has to be a presentation. It
No.
has to be a report, an annual report. But I think the thought process was to specify a presentation as opposed to just adding a report in the board packet.
okay, so,
Maybe it was too tasky, but if tasky's a word. But that was the
so it's a,
intent,
okay,
thinking.
right. So it's a presentation, so it's,
Could it be changed then to that the chairperson's duty is to assist the facilitator with the presentation of the annual SHAC report?
That's clearer. Perfect.
did you write that down?
No, I didn't, but because I
Okay.
was saying it as I,
I got it,
Okay.
assist the facilitator.
The
Assist
other
the
issue
facilitator.
is with respect to there's a reference in there to the report, and it says and recommendations. But in the end, I mean, the recommendations are going to be brought to you as they are completed. Not necessarily, it's not like they're going to wait until the annual report
Oh, right.
to bring
Good
that
point.
to you.
yeah.
So if there's going to be a recommendation on topic X, they're going to bring it to you when it's ready to go, right? So I mean, you'll need presentations, obviously, of that, so that y'all can make final decisions. But I
Well,
don't
so
know that
should we-
you'd make that be part of the annual report piece.
So should we strike through and recommendations?
I think so, because I think
Because-
the recommendations need to be brought to you in accordance with
As-
law.
okay.
You can't circumvent that.
Okay.
And they're not going to wait, I don't think, until the end of the year to do that.
Okay.
So do you mind reading back what you just wrote down?
I do mind because I haven't got it worded correctly. I wrote, assist the facilitator with the annual SHAC presentation to the Board of Trustees at something about the May meeting. I haven't quite figured that out. Here's, I guess tonight was possible action on this. I think with all the changes that we're doing, it might be better to bring this back with a clean copy. If we have, does this have to be done and ready before Wednesday for you to go? I thought it just was BDF, local, and legal. It has to be this?
I think one of the concerns was going to be, can I elect officers based on what we've approved, or a chairperson and vice chairperson? That would need to happen on Wednesday. And then creating the standing committees. So having that guidance in effect is what I would need for Wednesday.
Okay. So, because BDF local says SHAC shall elect a parent legal guardian chairperson and parent legal guardian vice chairperson from members in accordance with SHAC bylaws at the first meeting of the academic school year. So, because it says in accordance with SHAC bylaws need to be approved tonight. Okay.
Well, and you can
So-
approve the framework, even if final language still needs to be done. Because obviously they may need some tweaks and things like that, and obviously it would be brought back, or it would be provided to you all for final review. But you can certainly pass as discussed tonight, so that gives Ms. Aguilar the necessary guidance to proceed with Wednesday's meeting.
And then we can
we'll just
tweak this.
Yes, and then tweak it so where you finalize it before we upload it as the exhibit that will be to the policy.
Okay, all right. Is that helpful? Okay. All right, I'm down at standing committees. I'm still on page 4 toward the bottom, where there's 4 standing committees. It said, number C, says each standing committee chairperson, subject to the approval of the SHAC chairperson, may request for their committees, or members for their committees from the SHAC membership. And I think that the way well, my opinion is that the parents should, it shouldn't be chairpersons picking their people. It should say, parents say, well, I'm interested in the fitness and physical activity. But I also think that so we each have 4 parents, and there's 4 standing committees. So I think we should, one of our parents should be on each of those 4 committees.
I agree.
That makes sense.
So I think I would like to strike C. Instead of having the chairperson request the people, I don't know if we should say, parents can pick I don't know how to do that, but does anybody have any suggestions?
Maybe we can say something along the lines of standing committees should have a representation from each single member district.
Or no more than.
Well,
Because
and then I
look-
was going to jump over to item D, which was standing committees should be comprised of at least 4 members. I was going to say it should be at least 7, because
We have one from each
we're
district.
each on there, plus our 2 community members. But I think, I'm not sure why that was 4. I think standing committees should be at least 7. And, but yeah, so we could say, what was that, Ms. Landry? Each standing committee will be
Each
comprised
standing
of 1.
Committee should be comprised of at least 1 member from each single member district.
So how about we revise F? Because F says committees should strive for representation reflecting the diversity of the community served by NEISD.
Perfect.
Maybe you say committees should strive for representation reflecting each single member district.
Well, and maybe not strive, but say committees should be composed
Shall be.
or shall be.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If a committee member is not part of a standing committee, what is their role?
No, they will be.
Right, but the way this is written with 4 members per standing committee and 4 standing committees, that's only 16.
No. if
That's
we
why I
change
was
it-
saying we should
Right,
change it to.
I know, but what would they do otherwise, is my
So,
question.
so do we want to say standing committees should be comprised of at least 9 members?
Do we need to say that if we have at least 1 from each single member district? Do we need the numbers is my question. Because if they're not on a standing committee, what do they do? And if we limit it to less than what we have, then what do they do?
So,
So if it's 7, if we change 4 to 7, and there's, we're each appointing 4, that's 28.
28.
So
Then-
that covers each parent appointee.
She's
So-
asking, though, if you've got your 2
Two
community members,
What are they doing?
where are they? So they are also going on standing committees.
So
Right.
I think the gist of it is to not stack it with 1 single member district.
Exactly. And
And
I,
so it have
It's not fair. Yeah.
no set number, but the committees, each committee should be comprised of at least
At
one
least one.
representative from each single member district, and then just take the numbers out of there.
okay, and then should we also say something to the effect that the community members should also, so like the 2 community members from Johnson should not sit on the same committee. They should also be separate. So basically, every well, but that's not gonna work. So okay, help me out. So you're gonna have 4 Johnson parents and 2 community members, and I'm just using this as an example. 4 and 2, not 5 and 2, 4 and 2. So you're gonna have 4 committees. So then my 2 community members are gonna have to double up. So I will have on 2 committees at least 2, but there's no way to prevent that, right?
No, so then we just specify at least 1, because we're going to have to double up, but at least 1 from each single-member district is represented.
But then do we say no more than
No
2?
more than 2.
Because then you prevent me from taking my 4 and putting these 2 on this one committee, and technically having 3 on one.
So it sounds like the key is that there can only be 1 parent from each single-member district
Okay.
on a standing committee, right? That separates out your 4, but then, yeah, somewhere it's gonna double up. And so I don't know how that language,
And do we want to be that limiting to, again, if we have 2 nurses who are parents, who are part of the shack, and they want to be in the nutrition, the nutrition committee, do we really want to say, this is your specialty, this is where you are really proficient, you really understand how this works, but because there's another nurse from our community, then you have to go to another
Are you-
committee?
Well, not necessarily, because your nurse maybe, are you suggesting there's 2 nurses and 1 is from your community and 1's from my community?
No, they're both from my community.
Oh,
So
I don't know,
do
are
we need to
overthinking?
be that prescriptive? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
no, I just think we want to make sure that we've got equal representation.
Well,
On each
why don't we
committee.
just say that? Have equal representation.
Because it doesn't equally.
Mathematically,
split
it
out,
doesn't
but I
work
mean,
out.
as long as you,
But at least
Mathematically, it
one,
didn't work out, though.
I know it
at
doesn't,
least
but I
one
know,
from
right.
Yeah,
each
well,
single-member district.
Okay, so equal representation with at least 1.
Yeah, standing committees shall be comprised of at least, of 1, a minimum of 1 parent from each single-member district,
There it is.
period. So that gives you 7 parents at a minimum, 1 from each of your districts on a standing committee.
Okay,
As far as committee or community member apportionment, I mean, I feel like that's kind of up to you all. I mean, because I think Ms. Landry's point's well taken, that you might have some subject matter experts, right? And you don't want to limit that. But in order to make sure that you're not having, I guess, one single-member district that gets overrepresented, you could say that, committee or community members shall be apportioned, and I guess how big are the standing committees going to be?
So, Mr. Lopez, let me just jump in there, but I'm just wondering if you go back to kind of what the shack is to be comprised, right, of at least 51% parents. To look at it and just say that each standing committee shall always at least have the majority of parents, that way then it protects you, because I'm just trying to think logistically from y'all's end how you're going to track all this, right? Mm-hmm. And to Miss Landry's point, like, look, you may have a couple nurses. Well, that's fine. But we just don't want so many community members to kind of go on to a standing committee that it may outweigh your parents' voices, right? So that,
Yeah.
in the end, I think what I'm hearing anyway, is that you want to make sure your parents' voices first. And then, sure, a couple community members can jump in, but they're never going to outweigh your parental voice.
So maybe-
Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
That's
So I
right.
think it's,
No more than 2 community members per
right,
standing committee.
Well, no standing committee can consist of, or be
But we-
comprised of more than,
But we have in
X.
here that the standing committees have to be majority parents, so that in itself
Yep.
already covers us, so.
So mathematically, yeah, as long as your majority of each standing committee is parents, then however many community members are on there,
And
period.
it's in our BDF local,
Yeah.
under standing committee. A parent/legal guardian would chair each standing committee. Each standing committee will consist of at least 51% parent/legal
There you go.
guardians.
Right, so we're
Yep.
covered, so we don't have to set a maximum,
Right.
just set a
Okay.
minimum.
So okay, so if I'm hearing this correctly, we're striking through number C. That was at the bottom of page 4. D was already stricken through, and there was a new D, but we're striking through that D. And then, I guess, will that become the new D? The facilitator will serve as a resource to all committees?
Actually, it would become the new C.
Oh, yes, thank you. And then the new D is committee should strive for representation reflecting the diversity of the community, or do we need to even have that since we've said standing committees shall be comprised of a minimum of one parent from each SMD?
I think D was going to become the standing committee should be comprised of one parent from each SMD.
So we can strike through what is F, right?
Right.
Okay. So we're only going to have a C. And
And a
then
D.
a D that is the standing committee one at the top. Okay.
Wait.
Yes?
Go back through the letters again. We've
Yeah,
struck,
'cause I
we
don't
have
know
A.
There's
we
a
have
A, a B.
We've struck
as-
the C.
A C is now, the facilitator will serve as a resource to all committees. And the D is, standing committee shall be comprised of a minimum of one parent from each SMD.
Okay.
So F, there's no F.
Correct.
So the D that was stricken is still stricken.
Mhm.
And E
No
is
E.
the new C,
Yes.
and then D still remains D, the D in blue,
Correct.
but it's reworded.
Well, it's
The
the standing
D in
committee.
blue said standing committees shall be, so it now is standing committees shall be comprised of a minimum of one parent, yeah.
Okay.
Was there anything else on that? And I forgot something on page 4, I'm sorry to make us go back. But it talks about how the committee chairperson shall be a parent or community member. They will request volunteers for each standing committee chairperson. If there are multiple volunteers for a SHAC chairperson, if there are multiple volunteers, the SHAC chairperson, vice chairperson, and facilitator will work collaboratively with members to select each standing committee chairperson. My question is, should we have, so let's just say we've got the nutrition standing committee. And they say, okay, who wants to be the chairperson for this committee? And 3 people raise their hands. Should the committee people vote to see who that chairperson is, as opposed to the SHAC chairperson, vice chair, and facilitator trying? I don't know really what work collaboratively with members to select the chairperson looks like.
Is that a challenge?
So I've not had to do that yet. So I do wonder, though, I feel like it would make sense that the standing chair would vote if there were more than one person who wanted to volunteer. But I can't speak, I haven't had experience with that yet, because we've always had a chair who was already there.
I feel like it's one of those things that unless it's a problem, we don't make it a problem.
So do we even need to have that on there? Like, does it need to be stated in the bylaws?
Does it give you peace of mind to have guidance?
It actually makes me more nervous the way it's written here, only because I don't like having the responsibility to say who that chair is going to be, because it's not my committee, if that makes sense. I'd rather take myself out of it if that needs to be between the SHAC chair and vice chair. As I mentioned to you all, I always worry about a conflict of interest because the SHAC does so much work that revolves around my department. I worry if I have to make these kinds of decisions that there is a perception that I'm stacking people on committees that will make decisions that I want. So,
Well, then what if we let the people on that committee, so if 3 people raise their hand and say, I want to be the chair, maybe the committee says, okay, well, you tell me why you want to be it, and the committee decides who
Absolutely.
it is, as opposed to the SHAC chair and vice chair.
that's absolutely what I would prefer, but it's
Okay.
your committee.
So that would be striking facilitator from that sentence.
Well, I think it then makes it a vote. If there are multiple volunteers, the committee will vote.
And I would recommend adding a sentence into that simply says, and such votes shall continue until a person is selected by majority.
Okay.
Because you could have ties to start.
So say that again, and such voting what?
Such voting shall continue until a chairperson is selected by majority vote
Okay.
of the standing committee.
So who leads that vote? You're saying the committee will vote. I mean, who's going to lead that process?
Well, and that's why I
The
was saying that we
facilitator?
take the facilitator
Yeah, I mean, the
out.
facilitator can, I think, lead the vote, but it's, if you have, I don't know, let's say you have a standing committee of 9 people, I mean, you could have ties if you're
I mean,
voting
sure,
for
no, I
3,
understand
right?
that. I was just
So,
asking about
yeah,
who's
I would
gonna
say the
lead that
facilitator
process.
can certainly lead that process to ensure its integrity.
But if we take facilitator out, as Jennifer mentioned, she's not comfortable
And
with,
if we take her out, then
we have vice chair and chairperson
Right, but
that can help facilitate the vote, but not dictate how that goes.
oh, sure.
right.
And that's kind of what it
I
says
mean, you just
here.
can't leave it up in the air for the committee. Somebody has to
Right, because you're voting for the chairperson of the
to
committee.
lead the process.
But if it's vice chair and chairperson and remove facilitator,
And I'm fine with facilitating the vote. I
Okay.
just don't want to be the one who collaborates to decide who that is, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
yeah, and the facilitator doesn't want to be a decision maker of any kind, but she
But you
can
can
count,
be
you
the
know, she can
facilitator.
facilitate the votes, count the votes, that
Okay.
sort of thing.
Okay. All right, sorry that we had to go backwards, but I forgot about that. Back on page 5, section 2, it says ad hoc committees. I am curious what there would be an ad hoc committee for. Did y'all,
I can't speak to that.
Section 2 ad hoc.
and it looks like this was existing in the.
yeah, so I'm
previous-
wondering if we need this.
Well, didn't we have more than 4 standing committees before, and then we narrowed it down to the 4? Do you remember what the others were? I think, wasn't there 6?
We combined a couple, I think.
Yeah,
I-
there were more than 4.
Well,
Yeah.
I think maybe it doesn't need to be in the bylaws, but I think Robert Rules covers or allows for ad hoc committees to be formed if necessary. I mean, we didn't have. we
Kinda
didn't
like
have an
what
ad
we
hoc
did.
Committee,
So
yeah.
we can
So strike this?
strike it.
Okay. All right, and then facilitator. I think in the past that it was not, and she was called a coordinator at the time, but like for recording and preparing the minutes, I think that was done by a secretary. Was there actually a secretary that was
I guess
appointed, or was
What
it
I
just
saw
a-
historically was well, Britt Klein previously,
Right.
who was Research and Technology Coordinator, I think was her title, and that title has since changed. There was not, that I've seen in past minutes, a secretary in
Okay.
Shack who did that, if that makes sense.
Okay, all
If
right.
that's what you're asking.
Okay, that is what I was asking. All right, so, that's that. All right, does anybody else have anything on that, facilitator? Okay, the very last thing under parliamentary authority, the SHAC adopts Robert Rules of Order as the parliamentary authority to give binding rules of order to SHAC meetings. It is only binding to the extent that it does not conflict with the SHAC bylaws and Texas law. I'm not sure what that means. And do we really need to have this piece in here? And maybe that's a Rick Lopez question.
It seems to me that you're talking about essentially, I mean, you've already established how the votes are, right? How the votes are going to be done and handled. I mean, I don't know that this is necessary, but on the other hand, adopting Robert's Rules of Order is just a good guide for the SHAC as a whole to have. I'm not sure. I think I understand what the ad hoc committee was looking to do, and that's just make sure that, look, if we are going to apply Robert's Rules of Order, it's just that as long as it doesn't conflict with bylaws or any existing Texas law. I'm not aware that there would be a conflict in using Robert's Rules of Order with any existing Texas law. I mean, the issue is really the Open Meetings Act, right? And we know that the SHAC is not subject to the Open Meetings Act. So that'd be the only potential law that could exist as far as a conflict is concerned, but I don't see that being the case here.
So do
By
we
just
need to say
adopting
that?
Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, I don't know that, I don't think the second sentence is necessary, but you
Okay.
can certainly say that you can adopt Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think the second sentence.
Yeah, I don't think the second
we
sentence
need
is
the
needed.
second sentence
Yeah.
either, but
Yeah.
again, a lot of organizations typically uses that Robert's
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Rules as a catch-all, you know?
It-
So,
It's a
It gives
great way,
guidance. Yeah.
especially when you might be discussing certain, issues where a lot of people have different input. It's a good way to bring stability to the process.
Right.
Right? And so Robert's Rules of Order, I think that's fine for
Right.
y'all to adopt that.
Yeah,
But
I-
I don't think the second sentence is needed,
Right.
because the truth is the SHAC, I mean, again, the law is the law, right? So the SHAC can't conflict with it, neither can
Right,
your
right.
bylaws. So,
and we can't put everything in
No.
bylaws, so what's not there,
Yeah.
we refer to Robert's Rules.
Yeah.
that's right.
No, I agree with the first sentence. The second sentence is what was kind of throwing me off.
Okay.
And then there were two documents that were attached. This SHAC annual process, which I'm not really sure what this was. And then it also has a lot of, they're only required to have 4 SHAC meetings, and it looks like there's 6. And I know it says SHAC/committee meeting, so I was just kind of confused as to what this little flow chart was.
So I don't think I don't think this is something that needs to be voted on or included,
Okay,
or the, let's see,
or this
or the
list?
next, right.
Okay, so
I
what
think
we're
it's
doing
just for
tonight is just the
information.
bylaws?
Yeah,
Okay.
because again, it's the ad hoc committee report, that's the bylaws is what's on the agenda, this is not.
Okay, I
Referenced
wasn't
or
sure, because
part
I
of the
thought these were
bylaws.
attached to the bylaws, so, no, okay, perfect. All right,
May I just, for a point of clarification, but this document that shows SMD 1 with the term, this is the document that you want Ms. Aguilar now to use, correct? When bringing these to you each August to vote on?
That's how that was my understanding of what the,
Right, because the
The
old
different
one didn't
cluster.
have some of this. So I just want to make certain that we understand, I understand you're not voting on it, but I want to make sure that's the document that we're going to use going forth instead of the one that we've been
I think
given.
it's a recommendation.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's a great question, because my follow-up question would be, who's deciding of current members, who's on which term? I'm not sure if for example, I think Churchill, you only had to add 1 this year. So I'm assuming your 1 is obviously on the 2-year term. who of your three who are left are now only on a 1-year term versus a 2-year term? That would be my question.
So I guess that's a good question and a good point, because I know that, for instance, I know one of my parents will roll off this year because their child is graduating. So it might be helpful, at least for me, to go through and say, okay, well, I know this parent will be done, so that could be a 1-year. So, but I'm wondering if we need to bring this back at another time to appoint those people as, I mean, does this need to be approved if we're setting their term?
So
I mean, we've already approved the
we've already
membership
approved
list.
the membership.
I think we maybe need to talk to, each of us needs to talk to our appointees and see where they are. For me, I just have to have one person say that they'll do a 1-year term, and or 2 people do a 1-year term, rather. So talks amongst themselves to see who will do 2 and who will do 1. And then for the others that are appointing 4 new ones, maybe that trustee decides arbitrarily or talks to them.
Okay, what were you gonna
The
say?
appointed.
I would say, is that something we can just provide before the end of the year
Before the-
and
yeah.
not have to vote on it? I don't think we necessarily have to vote on that, but I mean,
think we
the
need to
membership is
talk
the
to them.
membership, and we
Yeah.
voted on that.
Yes.
And if we're able to provide Ms. Aguilar the roster, the complete roster from each single member district before December 31st, 2022, to indicate who, that way they know going to the spring who's,
Okay.
That
it
work?
gives them enough time.
When do you want our community member names?
Well, it was my understanding that the list is the list for this year, and that the new list that we've just talked about, where we've added the 2 community members, that's effective the next school year.
And that was the discussion at the last meeting. Yeah,
That was
that
my
would wait
understanding
until.
as
So we'd
well.
go with the 4 everybody has, and I think we filled another community member spot from an organization, plus we have the district staff. And then next year, we'll each get to add, well, if you have people roll off, you'll have to appoint new people, plus 2 new community members.
Right?
Ms. Aguilar?
No, I just thought I was asked, and I said, was answering yes. Yes.
Oh, okay, yes.
And yes.
Okay, so any other questions or comments about the bylaws? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the bylaws as presented with all of the changes that we have discussed?
I move that the bylaws be approved with changes as discussed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Landry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Yes, great work, ad hoc, great work, all of us. But now I do have a question. The bylaws said that they needed to be approved by SHAC, but that's for like next year going forward, right? Like, they don't need to be reviewed? Because we're approving them and this is what's gonna go.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That was my understanding.
That we've now established what the bylaws will be, and now they will review them annually,
Okay, so
or as
in,
changes come up.
well, in May,
May.
if there are changes that the SHAC committee has, they will bring those in May to us for review.
To Ms. Landry's point earlier, right? Don't make it a problem unless it's a problem. And I think that's your opportunity now to see a year, have that shack reflect and come back and say, hey, you did a good job, but in practice, this isn't working really well, so here's a recommendation that is for you all to review and vote on accordingly.
Okay, all right. So item 3, adjournment, and the time is 8:20. Thank y'all, everybody.